Hello, name's Alan, welcome back to the channel, thank you very much for tuning in. Today we'll be making a tier list for which it is necessary to establish certain rule sets. Hence, I will briefly introduce my preface regarding elemental advantages, as well as the tier list evaluation criteria. So, let's get into it. Fire, in my opinion, is the strongest element in Wizard of Legend due to items like Ebon Cloak, Stanza of Flames, or Neve's Ruby specifically supporting fire damage, as well as abilities generally having an insane amount of base damage, a usually accompanying fire debuff dealing a decent chunk of damage very quickly, and a very high signature charge gain for extra damage across the board. Lightning and water or ice are the second strongest elements due to strong supportive items like Ebonwolf's Cloak or Neve's Citrine, as well as for ice, Stanza of Frost, Special Snowflake, Pandemic Pouch, and the Fuzzy Hand Warmers. Lightning pairs up very well with base damage increases and critical hit builds, while water is very strong for projectile destruction, healing, and crowd control with the Frost debuff. Earth is second to last due to poison taking too long to apply damage and generally doing a poor job of stun locking enemies. Additionally, most Earth abilities rely on crowd control, are rather slow to use, and therefore not very good into bosses. Wind, in my book, is clearly the worst element due to a huge lack of base damage on most wind abilities. Additionally, slow is the worst debuff as it does not damage, kill, nor stun lock enemies and has a rather niche use of creating space between you and your foes. Wind abilities generally are very clunky or have to be used from point blank range, making them even worse in that regard. Wind abilities generally are better when used as a supportive ability for applying slows, destroying projectiles, repelling or moving enemies, and for granting movement speed or cooldown reduction to yourself. We will be evaluating our tier list today using the following criteria in order: ability category, useful item or arcana synergies, base damage or effective damage dealt, coverage in terms of width and range, signature charge generation, ease of use and unique quirks, projectile destruction capabilities, and finally, status effect applications. Today we'll also be looking into the signature versions for these abilities, specifically looking into what cool quirks they possess, how much damage they deal on average, on the low end, as well as on the high end when wearing a shark mask. Hi guys, we made it. I'd say let's continue on with the tier list scheme, which is fairly default looking. At the very top we have the dreaded S tier, reserved for only the best of the best, the creme de la creme, the universally good and awesome. We love to see these. These go with everything like a fine wine. Followed up by the A tier for the above average, the good and the great. Followed up by the B tier, which is anything remotely considered decent or quite average. C tier is a little bit lackluster, below average or meh, if you like short terms. And then finally, D tier is for anything that is considered to be of poor quality that you wouldn't want to get your hands on, generally speaking, or that has quite a niche to fill. Let's leave it at that. Additionally, I added an I don't know tier for anything that I lack the personal experience of giving my refined opinion on, or anything that I simply do not use whatsoever and therefore I don't have an opinion on. I may or may not state an opinion here occasionally on separate abilities, however, it is merely a guess and not one coming from a great amount of experience. Additionally, as a side note, we will be going through these icons, we will be going through these abilities in-game order, i.e. starting with the fire element and then going through element-wise from left to right throughout the in-game Wizard of Legend Arcana book, whereas here these have been inserted in alphabetical order. Some of these images, which I can assure you are perfectly square in my personal image assets folders, have been squashed beyond recognition, so this is going to be quite fun. I'll definitely have to look through this list here and find the individual abilities by heart. This is going to be quite interesting. That having been said, with all that other way, I'd say let's get started. Let's begin with Heroic Blaze. Heroic Blaze is a melee movement standard arcana. It's also a jump. That means out of the gates it combines with a crap ton of different relics and a wide variety of such. For example, Wondrous Mechanism, which is an item you will hear me mention a lot today, because whenever you have a signature whose signature ability you actually want to use for damage output, Wondrous Mechanism comes into play and makes that ability deal way more such damage. It is a little conditional because it assumes that you'll be able to charge a signature bar and that you'll be able to use a signature ability, but when you can actually do, provided that you haven't taken one of the few curse ranks in the game that can completely ruin that, Wondrous Mechanism is fantastic. Also, not to mention, this combines with a, I forgot the, I think it's the Time Crystal something, I forgot the raw name of the cursed relic. We'll be getting into that soon with a relic tier list. It combines with that to the Volatile Gemstone, one of the top 5 items in the game. I would say even top 3. This is easily one of the best items in the game. Especially on this tier list, this has to be the best item, period. Because it makes you charge your signature extremely fast at a very minute downside, and also deal a crap ton of more damage. So Wondrous Mechanism is undeniably a great pick for almost every single ability on here, if not every single one, depending on how you actually approach these abilities. Ancient Fountain Pen further is also quite a great relic for this particular ability, as it is quite self-sufficient, and Ancient Fountain Pen loves that on a signature. We can generate crap tons of signature charge bars, just blow them through, regardless of whether we hit anything or not. Ancient Fountain Pen is going to give us more base damage on everything we do. Shark Mask is a great fit for anything that already deals a fantastically large amount of damage, because it guarantees a 100% crit chance on signature ability use. Megalodon Tooth likewise is amazing because it allows for the potential, which is already amazing on an ability like this, to just spam the signature version of this as often as you want, pretty much. And that is ridiculous, and combines with, well, itself and anything in the relic list here, pretty much. Regenerative Inkwell is quite an interesting relic that also pairs up very well with this ability, as it is a jump, as it is quite self-sufficient. You can use it defensively, or just for utility. You can, for example, use it to iframe through certain things, or just pull in enemies while being invulnerable and just killing them right away. Or you can use it for like really tricky enemies like late game relics that are extremely fast, and you just proc them with like the initial hit of this. It hits many different times, and then they will be drawn in and likely die. Regenerative Inkwell can take this ability and set a very defensive twist, a very defensive focus to it, if you wish, because it takes away the ability while you're holding the item. That is, you can drop it at any time, of course, and pick it back up if you want to. It takes away the ability to use the signature version of this, which isn't that bad, because when your signature charge bar is full and you use your signature, you will just be gaining a regular version of this ability, which is quite overpowered, as we will be looking into it in a second here. Just hold on tight a little longer. I have a lot of relics here to work through. It'll also heal you. So, as the trade-off for losing your signature, you get a fat heal every time you use the signature version of your ability, which is fantastic, because this ability grants you iframes as a jump, and it heals you. That is defensively pretty much as strong as an ability can become, while still dishing out fantastically enormous amounts of damage. Next in line in the relic recommendations, there's a lot. Just hold on tight, I'm almost done. Are the usual contenders for making movement and especially jump abilities. Go to the moon and beyond in terms of DPS output or utility. Being Vicious Bunny Ears, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, and Fiery Paintbrush for just tremendous amounts of extra DPS dealt. And if you're feeling a little quirky, Cobalt Firestone also works particularly well with this ability, as it draws in enemies, so Cobalt Firestone can apply a little bit of dot damage here and there if you like the little numbers and not astronomically huge 100 damage plus numbers. The regular version of this deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, granting a great amount of signature charge generation. Great. It's easy to use and grants invulnerability while jumping on demand, that is. It'll also burn enemies on top if that great damage, great coverage, yada yada wasn't enough for you already. The signature version of this, surprisingly, doesn't deal a tremendous amount of damage, but still will deal anywhere between 180, which is pretty fucking solid if you ask me. Anything above 150 is like where we start talking about good abilities, to 264 damage. This is absolutely S tier just for the base version of this ability. You don't even have to use it as your actual like dedicated signature ability. You can just use the regular version of it, slap a regenerative inkwell on here, or a certain amount of other relics that do kind of a similar thing, but a little more underwhelming than the regenerative inkwell, and you're gonna do fantastically well. For that reason alone, it's gotta be S tier. The base version of it, if you haven't watched the standard Arcana tier list, go look it up for reference. God damn it, what are you doing? Most of these abilities, they can differ quite a lot from both the enhanced version and especially the signature version of the ability. But this, Heroic Blaze, it's ridiculous in any given shape or form, whether it is the unenhanced version, just the base enhanced version, or even the signature version of it. It is ridiculously overpowered, as is to be expected for most jumps here today. When they are already exceptional in the regular unenhanced version, of course they're going to be the best abilities in the game, undeniably so, when you add the enhancement and when you add a signature on top. Which is, by the way, pretty much just 100% cooldown reduction, right? When you acquire the signature bar, you can just use a more powerful version of the ability, and that way just spam it constantly. Alright, enough Heroic Blaze, let's move on to Blazing Lariat. Blazing Lariat is yet another melee movement standard Arcana that is not a jump. Boo-wee-you, as if we needed any more of those busted abilities. Blazing Lariat combines pretty well with Wondrous Mechanism, no shit Sherlock, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, and Dark Katana for DPS increase. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, pretty much hitting the entire room every time, granting you a decent amount of signature charge. It is fairly easy to use and grants you versatile movement. In fact, you can get really cocky with this, go right up the face of someone like a Freya, and in the middle of the boss attack pattern you use this, you deal damage, you apply a burn status effect for extra damage, and you dance behind your enemy, and you can pretty much not be hit by anything there, so you can just combo off of there. So that's pretty fun to do, although not the safest way to play. So be warned, the signature version deals anywhere between 170 and 318 damage, although that is very inconsistent, very difficult to acquire. I would say this is A tier all the way, because unlike the unenhanced version, this is great for room clear. It is even pretty damn solid for boss clear, especially now that it has an extra signature to deal a much higher amount of damage when compared to the base or the enhanced version of this ability. And this is exactly what Blazing Lariat needs to become some sort of all-rounder in the game. Next in line is Blazing Blitz, should be this one over here. Blazing Blitz is a melee movement standard Arcana, also not a jump. Wondrous Mechanism is fantastic, Shark Mask is overpowered as hell. Likewise, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush, the usual damage ups are pretty darn powerful. Singing Bowl additionally is insanely strong on this ability. It hits very frequently, it deals fantastic base damage already, and Singing Bowl is like Shark Mask if you didn't have to charge your signature. And since you only use this ability occasionally and preferably only on single targets, this is your main boss killing tool, Singing Bowl is just S tier for this thing, absolutely. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a very poor coverage. It's pretty much single target only, even though it is already Blazing Blitz enhanced. So, you know, don't think too hard about the unenhanced version where I put that one in the list. Just go watch the video. Come on, just go watch it already. You need the references. It deals, it grants you a decent amount of signature charge gain. It is rather easy to use, though can be interrupted easily due to its long duration and lacking coverage. So, again, you better make sure your target is isolated. You better make sure you're isolated for any ranged attacks, and you're using it in a spot and time where you can, where there's not going to be a rogue right up your ass, or where there's not going to be a ranger shooting at you from the distance, or heck, while you're standing inside of a trap, for example. That's pretty dumb. So if you just apply basic logic, this is rather easy to use, I feel, because you're not going to tend to just spam it whenever you can, especially in full crowded rooms, but use it against high priority single targets instead, like Stompers, for example. The signature version deals 120 to 370 damage. So this has fantastic boss killing potential. Unfortunately, the room clear is very lacking, so it's got to be B tier or even lower down the list because we are only ranking these abilities against each other and not on a general spectrum here compared to regular abilities, for example. So this might even end up in C tier or lower down the list later down the line. We shall see. Next on my list is Flame Breath. Ooh, Flame Breath. Should have brushed your teeth, you filthy pig. Flame Breath is a melee standard arcana, which pairs up pretty well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Bladed Buckler, Dark Katana, and Agni's Sparkler. Bladed Buckler is especially interesting on this ability though because we are talking about a signature, and Bladed Buckler gives you signature charge when you destroy projectiles on a signature. Signature charge equals cooldown reduction, so the more projectiles there are for you to destroy, the more frequently you can use the base and signature version of this ability. This is just potentially an infinite loop, especially in boss fights, especially in the Freya boss fight. Man, I love just comboing the fuck out of her ultimate. It's just so satisfying. You should try if you haven't. The regular version of Flame Breath deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting you a poor amount of signature charge gain in and of itself, when you hit enemies, that is. It is rather easy to use and grants you a great amount of projectile destruction and a large cleaving motion in front of your character. And it will also burn enemies for a little bit of higher decent damage. Yeah, this is a pretty solid ability. The signature surprisingly deals, on the low end, only 60 damage. That's below 100. That is extremely bad. That is worse than certain unenhanced abilities deal in a single hit, especially when critting. To 242 damage, potentially, although a lot must happen for that to ever occur, and you may need some relic support from something like a Mystic Monopole, for example, or like a Kasim's Area Cloak, or Headband and stuff like that. Either way, this is a rather solid ability. I think I'll put it right here above Blazing Blitz because, like I said, Blazing Blitz is just really horrendous. Maybe I'll lower it to C tier for now. It may be fantastic as a boss killer, but you certainly cannot compensate in any way, shape or form for its lack of room clearing potential, which can be devastating when you take into account this is supposed to be your main flashy ability that you use throughout the game. So I'll leave it in C tier for now, and Flame Breath goes into B tier. Moving on to Homing Flares. Quite an interesting ability, talking about the signature version here. Homing Flares is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up very well with Wanderer's Mechanism, no shit Sherlock, Ancient Fountain Pen because this is yet again pretty self-sufficient, Shark Mask, Gloves of Gambit, Chaos Visor because of damage, and Fire Paintbrush for that yet again sweet signature damage potential. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and a decent coverage, although that's kind of hard to determine as you essentially just surround yourself in a bunch of summons that home in on enemies as long as they are somewhat nearby, so you still have to walk into enemies for this. So I'm gonna say it's just a decent coverage, right? Or even like a poor coverage, just define it however you want really. It grants you a great amount of signature charge, and it is very brain dead easy to use. You literally just pop the button and it's like a summon ability, but like way more powerful when we talk about the damage numbers and the signature charge game, which is greater than 0, so very much unlike any other summons in the game. The signature version deals anywhere between 220, that's on the low end, to 310 damage, and thereby is one of the most consistently like high damage scoring signatures on the list here so far, and spoiler, it will remain for the rest of the day as well. So this is pretty powerful as a signature ability, but in rooms it definitely lacks. But just because it's so tremendously powerful and tremendously easy to use, even in rooms, very much unlike Blazing Blitz, and just think of it as like 12 or so, I don't know how many flares actually surround you by heart. You can probably see it here on the Arcana Showcase video. But just imagine every single flare is a single target ability, and you cannot exactly control where they're going, but at least they're hitting the room. They are spreading like around you and hitting different targets and stun locking them and such. And especially like it's a guaranteed hit without you being interrupted, without you being taken away the ability to evade from and such, whereas Blazing Blitz just locks you into an animation. This is basically just a Blazing Blitz that just explodes outwards without actually, you get what I'm trying to say. It's a Blazing Blitz but way better, so I feel like it's warranted to put this into A tier, especially when you take into account it's alright into rims, not great, but it's fantastic into bosses, and this scales insanely well. This is one of the best scaling abilities in the game, not just talking about raw stats like damage, for example, or cooldown reduction, but like when I'm on loop 99, for example, this ability is still amazing. It may not clear the entire room for me, but bosses are really the greatest challenge at that point, and the only thing you really have to worry about. And this, you just pump it down at any point, and then you just walk towards the boss with a different ability, and boom, you've just dealt a tremendous amount of damage, and they're dead. Congrats! Amazing ability. Moving on to Tracer Barrage, an even more amazing ability in my humble opinion. Tracer Barrage is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up exceptionally well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen for that self-sufficiency, Shark Mask, Family Seal even, because it is so damn self-sufficient. Family Seal is actually really worth it here for extra signature charge gain. On a signature, that shit should be illegal to do. Reinforced Braces, if you don't get that reference, probably watch the standard arcana tier list. This thing is basically a bodyguard ability, especially with the enhanced version here as the signature now. Gloves of Gambit and Fiery Paintbrush. Fiery Paintbrush is just so broken on here. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, granting a great amount of signature charge. It is easy to use and grants you a decent amount of projectile destruction. And the signature deals anywhere between 120 to 370 damage. You probably wouldn't expect this to be as great as I am ranking it. It goes towards minimum the very top of A tier, if not even S tier. This is fantastic for room clear, fantastic for boss clear, and this thing scales so damn hard. I am considering putting it into S tier. That's pretty much like the greatest reason that I'm struggling so much with its ranking here. I will just leave it at the top of A tier for now. This may go into like S tier, maybe even the middle of S tier or such. We'll see, because you slap cooldown reduction on you slap projectile destruction on you with like even a bladed buckler if you already have the braces, for example, right? And you slap more self-sufficiency on it, like Wondrous Mechanism, Voltaic Gemstone. This thing can be permanently spammed, permanently destroy everything, deal way more damage than like Homing Flares, for example, in the process. It has a greater range, obviously, than the flares, because I don't have to walk towards an enemy. I can just use this from any range, and these fucking boomerangs of doom, they come back to me as well, so on the way back they also deal damage. It stunlocks the shit out of large groups of enemies, and especially that signature has girth, my friend. It's not just width anymore, it's girth. It hits everything. It's so good. Nothing can escape this ability. The only gripe I have with it is that the higher end of damage dealt on the signature version is quite hard to reach, as this ability is extremely difficult to aim, and I personally found myself being very inconsistent at it, even while training in the making of this video and creating all these showcases that you are seeing on the screen right now of these individual abilities. Moving on to Dragon Arc. Dragon Arc is yet another projectile standard arcana, pairs up well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Family Seal, yet again, it's very similar to Tracer Barrage in that. Reinforced Braces, same reasoning. Gloves of Gambit, Ring of Reserves, as it is a charge-based ability in that Ring of Reserves is essentially just a ton of extra base damage and a ton of extra cooldown reduction. Fire Paintbrush, and talk about cooldown reduction, Roxel's Pendulum, because cooldown reduction is fantastic on charge-based abilities. You can just spam the ever-living fuck out of them and abuse the fact that you have like 20 charges of an ability and can just, like if you wanted to, you could redirect this on every single shot, every single dragon unleashed, and stunlock another enemy, even if it's just for a split second. You have so many charges, it won't even matter, it's so good. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage. Again, it's retargetable if you're really cracked at the game. I'm not, I play on a controller, so I'm very limited, and I hate joysticks, by the way, I don't use those fucking things at all. So yeah, make of that what you will, granting you a great amount of signature charge generation, and it is fairly easy to use. Signature deals anywhere between 110 to 300 damage. Very solid ability. I'm not personally a huge fan of it. I feel like it should go right here. It's still very solid, and it scales pretty damn well out of control, especially with cooldown reduction and extra charges on it, like I said. Exploding Fireballs next. Oh, what a classy ability. I mentioned there's a crap ton in pretty much all of my videos, like every single one I mentioned this ability, how great of an addition this is to any build, whether as a signature or as a support ability with an unenhanced, enhanced, or using the signature. It does not fucking matter. This ability is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up exceptionally well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Gloves of Gambit, Chaos Visor, Fiery Paintbrush, and a Singing Bowl. So a bunch of extra damage dealt, a bunch of self-sufficiency, and granting yourself more signature charge, and even cooldown reduction arguably is fantastic, but I really don't want to enlist more items here. The regular version deals a great amount of damage. It is my de facto go-to. This is how to easily deal great damage kind of ability. It works on all skill levels. It has a great coverage overall. It's very explosive, has great range. It has pretty much the best coverage imaginable. It grants you a great amount of signature charge generation in the process, and it is extremely easy to use. Anyone can use this thing. Fuck, you literally start off with this thing. It's so goddamn good. The signature version burns enemies, which is pretty weird. Made me try to look more in depth at most of these abilities and compare the base and the enhanced version to the signature. Finding that was very weird. I'm still not sure that wasn't a fever dream. Maybe you can see it on screen right now, if I was lying or not. Well, I don't fucking know. I just wrote down it burns enemies, so it's probably true. And the signature also deals between 178 to 253 damage. 150 plus 28 off of that burn damage. That must have been a wild fever dream if I'm wrong on that. 253 is not all that great for an ability that is so well recognized and so well used and so extremely overpowered, and like, this is very much A tier. I don't want to put it S tier because it's quite frankly not. I am just ranking signatures against signatures. I'm not ranking these against each other or the unenhanced versions or yada yada yada. And this thing, naturally, it isn't fantastic for dealing damage, but it is great both for room clear and for single target clear. The range is fantastic. It makes you extremely flexible, and you can just fire this off, whether it be at melee range or ranged. It's just the fact that the signature version of this is kind of trashy. Like, it is still very good, don't get me wrong. You just get more bang for your buck, more uses of this ability essentially, but that's really it. And there are some signatures that are way more impactful, like Tracer Barrage, which can just end up becoming an infinite loop very easily, whereas the Fireball just shoots one big massive meteor of a projectile launching it straight into the faces of your foes. Next is Flame Cleaver. Flame Cleaver is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up exceptionally well with Bladed Buckler as well as Reinforced Bracers, because this is very much a bodyguarding projectile destruction tool, and it fuels itself and that very, very well, even better than Tracer Barrage, because this is pretty much the only thing this ability does. Gloves of Gambit and Ring of Reserves can help it either deal some more damage or become more defensively connotated, stun lock enemies more. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, granting you a decent amount of signature charge gain. It is easy to use, great at projectile destruction, and it'll burn enemies. So you could even slap an Agni Sparkler or something on here if you are trying really hard to make this deal any damage. The signature version of this deals anywhere between 110 to 196 damage, so fairly low damage overall, but this is a pretty much purely defensive tool even as a signature, so I think it'll go right here. It's just like Flame Breath, but Flame Breath at least has like potential to deal large amounts of damage, and Cleaver doesn't really, but it's still very solid in either case, whether it be for boss clear, just defensively or offensively, it doesn't matter. You can use it whenever, wherever, is what I'm trying to say here. I don't need to bring up these same examples as above again, I feel. Raging Inferno is next. Raging Inferno, I love this ability, use it plenty, is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up very well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, although I'm a little iffy about that. I wouldn't recommend that of any of the other relics here. Like, I would probably go for any of the other relics over Ancient Fountain Pen any day of the week. Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Regenerative Inkwell, surprisingly, because then you, this is a charged ability and you just get the full charge right away and heal yourself, and it's still very, very powerful. Gloves of Gambit, Chaos Visor, Fiery Paintbrush, and Singing Bowl. The latter two are just unimaginably powerful on charged. Just let me charge this nuke up and flick it at your foes kind of abilities. Especially Singing Bowl, you really have to try it. Again, Singing Bowl in essence is just a Shark Mask, but on crack. And if you run any few select abilities, especially those charged abilities like Raging Inferno or an Exploding Fireball, Singing Bowl just becomes an S tier of a relic. It's pretty much a must purchase when you see it, just for it's not even potential anymore, it's just guaranteed large quantities of damage. The regular version deals a great amount of damage, talk about damage, at a great coverage when you charge it up, getting a great amount of signature charge generation. It is fairly easy to use, has a massive range, which definitely contributes to its ease of use, and it'll burn enemies. The signature deals anywhere between 158 to 223 damage, so it's fairly strong. Very, very strong. Unlike its unenhanced or even regular enhanced standard arcana version, I feel like this is not S tier. It's still fantastic for room clear, I would argue. It's a little worse than Exploding Fireball, although it can do way more damage, especially the unenhanced version. It's really, really, really good. Again, the signature is overall worse. Its ease of use is kind of worse because you have to charge, you have to stand still for a while, you kind of have to know what you're doing. You'd rather flick it into open rooms. You don't want to find yourself trapped in a room and then have to charge this up and there's enemies split up across the screen. Yeah, it's not going to end all that well. You still sort of have to know what you're doing, but it is very powerful overall and scales wildly out of control. Inferno Beam. Next on the list. Damn, we are almost already through with the first element here. Inferno Beam is an undefined standard arcana for whatever unidentifiable reason possible, which pairs up pretty well, nonetheless, with Ancient Fountain Pen, Regenerative Inkwell, so you can use this as a very strong defensive tool. It's basically just a Flame Cleaver, but way more powerful overall. Bladed Buckler for the same reason, and Agni Sparkler also really for the same reason, to add some base damage to it, because it's a mostly defensively connotated ability as the signature version intends, I suppose. The regular version of this deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, especially the range or the length of this ability is admirable. Not a lot of abilities have cleaving motions that fucking broken. It grants you a decent amount of signature charge. It is easy to use, grants you a great amount of projectile destruction. I would argue this is the best projectile destruction in the game, bar none. Probably even better than something like a Tracer Barrage, which isn't particularly overpowered at projectile destruction, but at everything else pretty much, and it'll burn enemies. The signature version of this deals anywhere between 162 to 226 damage, although I would argue this is not very important. It's just a defensive ability, and probably the best defensive ability beside the obvious, which is jumps, that we will be seeing here today. I really enjoy this ability. I think it is extremely broken into bosses. I think it is very very, very powerful into rooms as well. You can quickly fire it off. That's a trick I resort to a lot, especially with these signatures. So you just use it and you dash out of it to cancel it, to just apply a quick burst of damage and burn enemies, and that'll keep them at bay for quite a long time. You can also use it the exact same way to just destroy projectiles, not arcing at you, but like coming at you in a fairly straight line. This is so damn powerful. I feel like it must go even above Raging Inferno, just because of how versatile it is and how well you can make it scale defensively. Keep that in mind. Raging Inferno, it can literally one-shot bosses at some point. Like when you loop and you get really good items, or even in a regular one, you get really good items. This can literally one-shot bosses with a Singing Bowl. It's so powerful. Well, I guess Inferno Beam can do that. So maybe I will rank it lower. Yeah, I feel like I have to, even though I don't really want to. I want to say it's better. I don't think it is. I don't think it is, truly. Crashing Meteor is the final fire signature ability. Crashing Meteor is an undefined standard arcana, pairs a very old wondrous mechanism, Megalodon Tooth. I think that is funny as fuck. Analytical Monocle, because it's undefined, and crit chance is actually very good on this ability. Fiery Paintbrush for the same reason. Electrifying Smuck, because it actually stuns. And Singing Bowl, because again, crit chance is really fun on this ability. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, I would say, granting you a decent amount of signature charge generation. It is fairly easy to use and will stun enemies. And the signature, although I do not explicitly state stats of signature abilities, the coverage of this ability is literally screen wide. It is so fun to watch. Yes, most of these will miss any and everything, and most likely an individual target will be hit by a maximum of 2 of these meteors at once, but it's still one of the most satisfying abilities to use and one of the most expressive, I feel, of your playstyle, and one of the most impressive if you're a new player. I love to show this off to new players. This just ignites a spark in their eyes every time, and when they realize this ability sucks, it's already way too late because they're like 100 hours into the game. Crashing Meteor is very fun. The signature only deals 140 to 240 damage on average, I'd say, which is still quite a lot when you take into account how weak it feels to use, but I'd say this is fairly alright. I don't think it's A tier because it really doesn't scale super well, and it's extremely clunky and it forces you to stand still, which is a huge detriment on later stages. I think it goes right here because Flame Breath is just so versatile, very similarly to the Inferno Beam. You can just quickly chug it in, which is especially valuable when enemies are extremely fast. So either when you start off a run with extremely fast enemies, or when you loop, or even when you just have a fairly weak build, Flame Breath, I feel, on average, is a lot more powerful, a lot more useful than Crashing Meteor, which forces you, unfortunately, to just be completely stationary for a few seconds, or even milliseconds. It doesn't matter. It is very clunky to use overall. Like, not on a base level, but like to make work against late game enemies, I feel this is not all that great. It is fairly reliable, like I can very reliably hit this, and I can say that it is fairly easy to use even for a new player because of its range and the impact, and it's not really all that hard to dance around a circle, but just the fact that it forces you for a cast to like calculate where's the enemy gonna go, where do I want them, and then stand still while actually casting it. It gets kind of clunky at times, I feel. Whirling Tornado is the next ability on the list because we are moving on to Wind. Whirling, is it this? I think it's this. Whirling Tornado is an undefined standard arcana, has a very old Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Bladed Buckler, and Roxas Pendulum. You can use this all kinds of ways, so I prefer to use it defensively as the Bladed Buckler here intends. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage around your character. It's pretty much a 360 coverage. Isn't that amazing? Although it's still a little short because Lancers can just straight up not be hit by it and just stab you through the damn thing. It's really annoying. It grants you a decent amount of signature charge. It is fairly easy to use and grants you a great amount of projectile destruction guaranteed around your character. The problem is it's around your character, so you have to time it pretty well. It doesn't have the greatest duration, so you can still be very easily hit by just making simple timing mistakes. The signature deals, I would say, 42 to 370 damage, which is insane, but you have to aim like you haven't aimed ever in your life, like you're a fucking CSGO pro, or like having played 20 years consecutively. It's really hard. I actually managed to pull it off, although I would say the most realistic, like, highest damage dealt against like a boss or an otherwise stationary target would probably be like 350. 370 was really, really brutal to get to. And 42 on the low end, well, yeah, if you can't aim well, don't use this signature ability, in essence. It is capable of 200 plus damage completely without relics. As I tested most of these signatures, to get the high end, right, with the Shark Mask, for example, right, because that guarantees you the 100% crit rate, and so I can better test how much damage this can potentially end up doing. But 200 plus damage completely without relics is exceptionally powerful. Just keep in mind how fucking hard it is to use. I feel like this is a very B tier ability. I don't think it could ever be A tier. It really doesn't scale well. It's very defensively connotated, and the range, it's too little. It's too little to me, personally. I don't think this is a great ability. I think you should add a little bit of radius to it, and then it would be quite great for room clear. Next in line is Tearing Whirlwind. Tearing Whirlwind is a melee movement standard arcana. The regular standard version of this is one of my favorite abilities in the game. Let's see how well the signature holds up. Spoilers, I still really love it. I still really love using it. It pairs up pretty well with Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, and also Destructive Abacus and Wings of Icarus, because you love to kill enemies in alternate means with this ability, i.e. by gently dropping them off, by gently sending them in Uber straight into a pit hole. Yippee! And Destructive Abacus and Wings of Icarus harmonize and synergize quite well together, especially with this ability. Wings of Icarus is actually kind of a valuable item for once. The regular version of this deals a very poor amount of damage and a great coverage around your character. It grants you a poor amount of signature charge generation. This is a fucking roller coaster. It is easy to use though, but it forces you to move. But it grants you movement speed. It's just one whole roller coaster of emotions. But really, the greatest pitfall of this ability, pun intended, is its poor damage. This is pretty much the only signature in the game that just does not deal good damage, and it's not capable of ever getting there. Doesn't matter how much damage you have, how late you are onto a run, this is always gonna suck donkey dick. It's more of an extra dash with the functionality of the ability to pull and push enemies around. So very much just a supportive ability. You are completely forced to play defensively, or rather for a utility approach. The signature version deals anywhere between 127 to 177 damage, so even that is fairly low comparatively. This is a very, very bad ability. You can still use it very well for room clear, but if a room doesn't have pits, what you gonna do, man? What you gonna do? What's gonna happen? You need some kind of combo to make this work. So I feel like bottom of C tier, it may be too gentle. Maybe I have to be harsher on this. Maybe it is just because I feel like truly there are not that many D tiers in the game, if any, in terms of signature abilities, but like I have used this so much and I can tell you it doesn't really get better at some point. You are just hard skill capped, and then you have to still get lucky and get a room with pits and such. Otherwise this thing requires for you to have some sort of combo piece or very much dedicated build to it. This is horrible at boss killing. It is so ungodly terrible at it that I'm really considering putting it down here, even though it is probably my favorite signature in the game, to be honest. I use this so much, I love this ability, and it depresses me every time I use it. Let's swiftly move on for now to Airborne Slam. Talk about my favorite abilities in the game. Airborne Slam is a melee movement standard arcana that's also a jump. You know what that means, you know where it's gonna go already. It pairs up very well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Vicious Bunny Ears, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Furry Paintbrush. You know the drill. It's just the regular. It's a jump, it's overpowered. Use me for damage and utility. Regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage. You're going to use a great amount of signature charge generation. Who would have thought? It's fairly easy to use, although very much unlike Heroic Blaze, forces you to move forward, whereas the Heroic Blaze forces you to stand still, which is not really as big of a deal. You have to space, i.e. position yourself pretty well when using something like an Airborne Slam. It grants you invulnerability while jumping. It doesn't jump as long, I feel, as Heroic Blaze, or as well controlled, or even controllable from the player's perspective, so I would note that as another downside comparatively to other jumps, but that's a nitpick. And it slows enemies, which is so good. It's so good. The slow is actually just such a huge addition, so tremendously valuable to an ability like this, because anything that you don't one-shot, like right away when using this, you can just easily gang up on afterwards with that slow, and they won't even stand a chance to get to you. It also has a huge knockback and then huge coverage, so you hit pretty much everything every time while being invulnerable. You slow them, push them away from you, they can't do shit even afterwards. It's like extra iframes in a way. The signature version deals anywhere between 194 to 291 damage, which is very solid. 194 on the low end is extremely powerful, I would say. So yeah, S tier all the way. Where else could it go? It's super duper powerful. You just have to know a few intricacies about jumps. Don't launch yourself into pits right away. But I feel like even a new player can use this fairly alright. A bit of a problem with the ease of use is that you can jump across enemies and you won't hit them, but you also won't be hit in the process. You can kind of fuck this up a little bit that way, but hey, I mean, generally this is extremely powerful. Next is Fading Petal. Fading Petal is a projectile standard arcana which pairs up pretty well with Wondrous Mechanism as well as Shark Mask, Family Seal, Reinforced Braces, which is pretty damn weird, but hey, you can do that if you want. Gloves of Gambit, Ring of Reserves for extra charges, Chaos Fires and Fiery Paintbrush. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a rather decent coverage. It's more of a combo piece though, so it's more of a an ability that sets things up or sets itself up. This actually works on the signature pretty damn well. Grants you a great amount of signature charge generation. Talk about setting itself up. It is rather easy to use, and unfortunately, I want to say it requires a fast combo as a follow-up, because you pull enemies in just that much, they will be right up your face. They will be able to stun lock you right away if you don't react in time, if you don't have some kind of backup plan here, or if you didn't even go in with the plan in the first place. I feel like this cannot be used as an individual ability without a dedicated build or a synergizing build. It also slows enemies on the flip side, so they're not gonna get away after stabbing you in the face. And maybe the slow buys you enough time, especially on floor 1 and 2, where enemies aren't that fast yet, to follow up, even if you're a complete slug. The signature version of this ability deals anywhere between 150 and 225 damage, so fairly middle of the pack. Because it has multiple charges, it can be quite powerful. You can make quite a lot of it. Although I feel like it's just a reverse Flame Breath, and I do actually personally prefer Flame Breath, even though, like Fading Petal, it does scale pretty alright, right? Damage-wise into bosses. I'm just not a huge fan of it, I suppose. I feel like it's more B tier than A tier. There could be meta point for it being very low A tier, but I'm not really seeing it personally. I don't really feel like I could make it be an S tier an A tier consistently. Shearing Chain is next. Shearing Chain is a melee movement standard arcana. Pairs up very well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Sock Cleats, Jumper Cables, and Dark Katana. Love that item. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge. It is clunky to use and forces you to move forward. I said it has a great coverage. What I mean by that, for a melee ability, it has a great coverage. But generally melee abilities are a lot harder to use because they have much worse coverage and therefore much worse ease of use. You have to approach target, you have to be very close, find openings to use it, and to even just go in and especially get back out unharmed, or well, just kill your enemies. I feel like this is yet again B tier. It could be A tier. Again, I could be convinced because it scales very well, especially off of that Dark Katana, and the I feel like the signature version of this is also very fun to use. This is more on the verge of A tier than I had expected, I feel. I don't know, this is a very difficult decision to make on the fly here, because on the one hand, its damage is very comparable to these A tier abilities. It's very solid, and its scalability is also fantastic, but the room clear is very difficult, and at times rather lackluster, especially when there's a lot of ranged enemies, or enemies with a lot of HP, let's say slimes or stompers for example. They stick around for quite a long time. I feel like, yeah, maybe this is actually a good spot. I do prefer it over these. I think it's more powerful than these because of the scaling alone. Like it's really damn good. And Flame Breath is still... No, I think I'll leave it at the... I'll just stick to my gut feeling, and I'll leave it at the very top of B2, even though I feel like this is a lot more clunky than something like Flame Breath, comparatively. Next on my list is Spiraling Typhoon. Spiraling Typhoon is a melee standard arcana which pairs up pretty well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, and Dark Katana for damage again, as well as a whimsical exploding, because this is more of a group up tool, more of a supportive damage ability I feel than a standalone very good scaling ability. Whimsical does add quite a lot of crowd control and killing potential though, so I do like that. You could also go for the special Snowflake if you wanted to, but I feel like Whimsical feels a lot more explosive, pun intended, and a lot more useful with this particular ability. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a poor coverage, grants you a decent amount of signature charge. It is rather clunky to use and forces you to stand still, also forces you to be very close to enemies, and well, yeah, it's pretty easy to use. The signature version deals 170 to 243 damage, which is surprisingly high because it does hit very frequently, so even on-hit effects would be viable, but on-hit effects in Wizard Legend are not particularly powerful. That's usually just status, ailment application, and thereby not very powerful at all. I feel like we may have found ourselves another C tier, or very, very low B tier. Yeah, probably very low B tier because it does have everything out of the box, like a little bit of everything. It's yeah, well, it does have single target damage, it does have some scalability, and it does have AoE damage. Technically, you just have to get very good at using it. So it's like a Blazing Blitz, but more usable overall, more easily usable as well. I don't have to master the ability first. Just some basics of how to line up, how to group up enemies without actually having any abilities. Or maybe you just add a support ability like a Tearing Wound, and then this can become quite useful. Also, the knockback can be quite fun and come out with things like the Crashing Meteor, for example. So first you dedicate some kind of location when a ability is going to land, whether it be a trap or like a Crashing Meteor, and then you reel the enemies in and push them into that location because you can pretty much relocate them very easily with this. So that's pretty fun. But other than that, not a very powerful ability overall. When Flurry is next. When Flurry is a projectile standard arcana, has a very Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Gloves of Gambit, Ring of Reserve, Safari Paintbrush, and Roxel's Pendulum. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, getting a great amount of signature charge, and it is fairly easy to use. Now, there's quite a caveat to most of this. Great coverage may be a little bit of an overstatement, as it is a line-based skill shot overall, and you have to aim it pretty well. You can play around corners though. I'm not sure I'm showing it off in the Arcana Showcase, maybe you can see it right here. But you can actually play ping pong with this thing, which doesn't exactly make it easier to use. In fact, I would argue, well, the base version of this is rather easy to use. Mastering using it is very difficult, especially in boss rush. I found it extremely difficult to prove my worth with this ability. The signature can thereby deal anywhere between 160 to 240 damage, so it's fairly alright, I feel. Not an ability I personally like at all. I really hate using it. I really hated my time in boss rush, and I definitely like, if you leave me the choice, I'm never gonna choose this as my signature. I have like a billion other abilities I would rather have. For example, a Blazing Blitz I would prefer any day over this. But undeniably so, this is quite alright. So I can't bump it down too low. I don't feel like this is A tier. I don't feel like it scales extremely well. Just the base version of this is pretty alright, and that's as far as I will go complimenting it. I feel like, yeah. Well, I feel like it's gotta go right here, and I feel like I should correct myself on the coverage because, while it does pierce and it does have long range and you can play ping pong with it, you still have to group up enemies, or you have to re-aim. It's like a Dragon Arc, right? Like what I said earlier. But Dragon Arc has an alright width. It's very acceptable, and it will definitely hit groups of enemies that are rather split up. When Flurry requires you to aim meticulously at each of them, or to clump them up, which is the easiest way of dealing with it, which I would consider more of an advanced tech, right? Newbies are not going to be doing that naturally, I feel. So, correct myself on the coverage and leave it at lower B tier, because the coverage is a pretty huge deal for this particular ability, I feel. But also, the scalability isn't all that great, especially for a signature. It's alright, it's very much middle of the pack, but there are other middle of the pack abilities that baseline are much more easy to use, and I would say all of these are much more easy to use, and even something like a Flame Cleaver can be much more impactful, especially in the hands of a complete beginner, because width is extremely powerful to a newbie. Width just means they don't have to aim as well, right? Even if it's very short range, or rather very short length, width is just crucial at hitting groups of enemies and not being stun-locked, but instead being the one stun-locking. Enough talkies, moving on to Storm Draft. Stormdraft. Stormdraft is a projectile standard arcana. Pairs up pretty well with regenerative inkwell, I would say. Other than that, you can go for like a family seal, gloves of gambit, fiery paintbrush, bladed buckler for projectile destruction, signature charge game, chaos visor, and even electrifying smock. Although that's more of a niche pick that only works against regular enemies, not bosses, especially not major bosses. Let alone mini bosses. The regular version of this deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage. Not decent for a signature, I feel, but decent like in the context of abilities as a whole. It grants you a poor amount of signature charge generation. It is rather easy to use and will stun enemies if you are able to knock them back into a wall. And that's quite a grab I have for this, because you lose out on a lot of potential with this ability the second we talk about boss clear, whether it be mini boss or regular boss clear, or even just hitting enemies that are knocked back resilient or resistant entirely, like Stompers for example. This is really annoying to use against them. Grants you a great amount of projectile destruction, but since the coverage isn't the greatest, especially when compared to things like Inferno Beam, well, it's not even great as a defensive tool. I really hate this ability. The signature version on the low end deals 60 damage, anywhere to 120 to even like 300 damage. It really highly depends on how you use and abuse this and what items you use with this, but I really hate it. This has got to go into D tier. This is so horrible in my opinion. You really can't use this even like just defensively. It won't work very well, not at all. It's too hard to aim and hit consistently. Next is Cyclone Boomerang. Cyclone Boomerang is a projectile standard arcana, which pairs alright with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Reinforced Braces, Gloves of Gambit, and Fiery Paintbrush. Nothing special here at all. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, gaining you a decent amount of signature charge. It is fairly easy to use, and the signature deals about between 200 and 295 damage, so expect a minimum of like 200 damage on average, which is pretty damn solid. Problem is getting there in the first place, since it doesn't get you a great amount of signature charge, and it's not the most, well, standalone ability out there, that's for sure. It definitely needs some support, but you can definitely help it out fairly easily. I would say it's very low A tier. I wouldn't say it qualifies for anything higher than like Homing Flares. Maybe it is actually greater than Homing Flares, but nah, I prefer Homing Flares because its ease of use is just through the roof, and the signature, like, you just need cooldown reduction to make Homing Flares work. For Cyclone, you need other abilities to compensate for its kind of lack of damage or impact on the room, especially as your run scales, as your run goes on for longer and longer. This is going to become worse and worse, and also locks you into an animation. As much as I love the signature version of this, it really locks you in place, and it takes way too long. You have to time this literally pinpoint accurately, and that just is impossible, especially in like boss rush if you're past stage, say 3. That's just not happening anymore. You need like a Sona's Happen or something like that to compensate, and that's quite a heavy requirement, quite daunting. But otherwise, very powerful ability, and could technically scale very well, especially if you had like a, I don't know. You really need a few things, like Invading Zephyr or something like that, or like I said, Sona's Hatband, Kasim's Aerial Cloak, something of the sort. Could be very powerful, but we'll leave it at that. I don't feel like talking about Cyclone Boomerang too much. This is not a hill I want to die on. I barely care about this ability. Blurring Falconry is next. Blurring Falconry is an undefined standard arcana. Pairs pretty well with Wondrous Mechanism, as per usual. Ancient Fountain Pen, Ring of Reserves, Roxel's Pendulum, and a Nerite Shell, because this is a very supportive ability, which is just a nice way of saying it has terrible base damage compared to other boys. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage. It grants you a poor amount of signature charge generation, and it is easy to use. Those stats are alright for a regular ability, but for signature, very underwhelming. So Nerite Shell definitely helps to have, well, impact at all, because this ability doesn't really have impact, like, whatsoever. Even the signature deals a mere 105 to 140 damage. Keep in mind, that's with a Shark Mask on. How the hell does it have sub 150 damage? That is ungodly. That is horrible. This is F tier. Sorry, D tier all the way. We don't have an F tier. If we had an F tier, it would be F tier. This has got to be the worst signature. Although I haven't looked at the list yet, but I feel like this will be the worst one on the list by a large margin, probably. Moving on to Gust Volley. Gust Volley is a projectile stun arcana, pairs up well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Gloves of Gambit, and Chaos Visor. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, although for that great amount of damage you have to shotgun your foes. This is absolutely not a room clearing ability. You have to be pinpoint right up the anus to fire this off and deal maximum damage. Otherwise it's really not worth it just to hit 1 or 2 projectiles from afar. That must be stressed. It grants you a decent amount of signature charge, and it is very hard to use efficiently. Like I said, it must be used like a shotgun. The signature version deals anywhere between 190 and 432 damage. It is capable, and this is the kicker, of up to 300 damage completely without any relics, ropes, and whatnot. That's insane. That is so insane. I have to rank it higher up. This is undoubtedly a C tier. Like, it's horrible. It's really, really, really bad into rooms. The only thing it does is kill bosses, and even at that, it's horrible because it's so conditional, and it gets so horrible the longer your run goes on. Focus enemies just get so fucking fast. Even the bosses, they don't really leave you long downtimes. But I feel like I'll leave it right here. This is the prize for being one of the most stunningly high damage abilities in the game. Single target damage, that is. Very low B tier, because single target damage turns out to not be all that important. Usually you are swamped with enemies, and this just doesn't put in any work. Even when you have a ton of base damage, you just fire it off from one corner of the room to the other. Chances are you have barely tickled anyone at all. Moving on to Sonic Breaker. Sonic Breaker is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up very well, yet again with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Reinforced Braces, actually, although it's kind of hard to use, Gloves of Gambit, Fire Paintbrush, Bladed Buckler, Chaos Visor, and a Sonar's Headband. The regular version of this deals a great amount of damage if you can get the damage to land. It grants you a decent amount of coverage if you somewhat know how to use this. Grants you a poor amount of signature charge gain, and, well, I just said it like 2 or 3 times, it is very clunky to use. It's very, very difficult to use, so Sonars can help alleviate that threat of you just being perma-stuck because you're stuck in this extremely long, well, let me just remotely control my wins animation for like, I don't know, way too long. It's like, it feels like 20 seconds, half a minute, it's way too long. It grants you a great amount of projectile destruction though, and I would probably use the signature for that, if I used it at all. I'm not gonna say I don't know where to rank it, but I will say that this is yet another ability that I would just never choose, ever. Not just because it's so stressful, not just because it's so bad, but it's also really unfun to use. Like, this works very well with on-hit effects, but like we said already, there's no like gain crit on hit, gain cool effect on hit. That's just apply status element on hit, and that is just not powerful at all, and it won't even work into bosses, especially Sora. The signature version of this deals between 120 and, get this, 500 damage. That's the maximum I could achieve in a lobby training for a while with a Shark Mask on, which is crazy to think about. So potential is there. It's just that both the base version of this and the way to that like potential, it feels horrible to me personally, so I'll rank it right here. This could undoubtedly be A tier or even S tier if you're really, really cracked at using it. I'm not, so, and I don't think the average user is. I think the average user sucks donkey dick using this. It's one of the clunkiest abilities in the game, bar none. For most people, I would argue this would probably be D tier or C tier, but I want to try and be fair, and I see the potential, I see how insane this could be, so I will rank it in low B tier, just to show off some sympathy here towards actual Sonic Breaker lovers, if there are any out there. Let's move on to the next element with Earth, starting things off with Terra Ring. Terra Ring is a melee standard arcana, pairs up exceptionally well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shock Mask, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush, Singing Bowl, and Electrifying Smell. We have another stunning ability, literally, pun intended. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage. It loses a bit of damage out compared to the unenhanced version. Look that up, it's a very, very interesting ability, and very debatable whether you would want the standard unenhanced or the enhanced version of this. Extremely fun ability though, overall, regardless. Where was I? I just really distracted myself. Right, great coverage. Has a great coverage, grants you a decent amount of signature charge generation, and it is fairly easy to use. The signature also deals anywhere between 175 to 260 damage. That is definitely upper end. I would even say high end. Like, it's very consistent to use this ability. It's very, very powerful. It's very comparable to an explosive fireball, although not at range. Always keep that in mind. But it is melee, so then again, you can slap a Dark Katana on it, and it's gonna scale wildly out of control. But also, then again, enemies get faster and faster, so melee ability is getting harder to hit, so that damage is not gonna matter. Yada yada yada. You know the drill at this point. I'm gonna rank it alongside Fireball. I feel like it's still worse. Also because the animation locks you in, whereas with Fireball I can just break free from the signature at any given point. Terra Ring, the base version though, is extremely powerful. You just chuck it in just like a Fireball, and it's gonna destroy everything. It's gonna stun lock everything in a 360 radius around you. Amazing! Seismic Entry is a melee movement standard arcana, also a jump. So, Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Vicious Bunny Ears, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Fiery Paintbrush, and Kasim's Airy Cloak. Sona's Headband isn't really an option, so Kasim's is the next best thing for this ability. It leaves you well open after using it, and that means you can get absolutely stabbed to death, especially by rogues, and even get completely stun locked, so Kasim's is just there to prevent that, i.e. to drastically raise ease of use to intermediate and new players. To me, it doesn't really happen anymore, but trust me, I've been there. Trust me, I've been there for a long time. I wanted to use this for a long time. I hated it for a long time, and I figured out it's a skill issue, really, truly. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, grants you a decent amount of signature charge generation. It's easy to use and grants invulnerability while jumping. The signature, which is something that I usually don't mention, but it grants you a great amount of maneuverability for a jump. It's super duper fun and very versatile, and it deals anywhere between 210 to 309 damage if you get all the damage out, which is very unlikely for this, unfortunately, but if you can somehow achieve that, if you can somehow dance around bosses and they will be stuck in place, something Sora very much never does, unfortunately, but most other bosses can do. This ability is pretty damn solid. It is a jump, it's not an ST jump, that's for sure. It's just kind of too clunky for that. I feel like it's so clunky I have to rank it down quite a bit, actually. Probably like down here, actually. Or maybe over here. I think it's kind of hard because it's so clunky to a new player. It's like, it's definitely not A tier. It is certainly not. It might not even be B tier. So I'll rank it down towards the lower end of A tier. It's gotta be A tier though. It's a jump. It's free outframes. It's free damage. Free everything. Free scalability. Just anything you can imagine. Next in line, let me scroll, is Tectonic Drill. Tectonic Drill is a melee movement standard arcana, one of my favorite abilities in the game, and one of the most renowned ones in player versus player environments. It pairs up exceptionally well with the usual Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Bladed Buckler for projectile destruction. This is quite unusual on a melee ability. Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Fiery Paintbrush, and Sano's Headband, actually, especially to new players. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, grants you a great amount of signature charge. It is easy to use and extremely versatile. It grants you a great amount of mobility. It's just a bunch of very long range, high damage, high versatility dashes all at once that you can use however you want. It pretty much allows you to quite literally dance and like perform certain moves. It's super duper cool, and it grants you a great amount of projectile destruction, which is why I included the Bladed Buckler, because that can actually be insanely powerful. And Sano's Headband can be insanely powerful for the reason that the signature of this, which also has great projectile destruction, fantastic damage, fantastic range, fantastic everything, does want you to just mash the button, pretty much, well, just press it as hard as you can once when your signature bar is full, and then stay in the animation and just unload on your target. It deals anywhere between 180 to 425 damage extremely consistently, and it'll destroy all projectiles in the process. It'll be right up the face of your enemy. Make sure there's only one enemy around, or at least all your enemies are combat, because they will die. Guaranteed. It doesn't matter at what stage of your run you are. This thing scales wildly out of control. This is easily one of the strongest abilities in the game. Especially the signature. It's so insanely powerful. I might even put it right at the very top, maybe even. But it doesn't grade your outframes, and the ease of use is, especially for a new player, it's very overwhelming. It's extremely difficult to use, I feel, like consistently well. Like a new player can still do it, but the double dash, comparatively to the regular version, this is where you just get the single dash, which is much easier to control. It requires commitment and knowledge. Other than that, this ability is like triple S tier. It's so good. It's so busted, so incredibly unfair to use, and I love it. I am all here for it. Moving on to Shattering Strike. Shattering Strike is a melee standard arcana, pairs up well with Wondrous Mechanism, Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Dark Katana, Paintbrush, Electrifying Smut for the stun, as is the case for many other abilities. I love that. It's my favorite element. Hey yo, my other boys. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and great coverage, giving you a great amount of signature charge generation. It's easy to use and gives you a great amount of projectile destruction. This is an exploding fireball if it's scaled wildly out of control. It's way better than Terra Ring in my opinion, especially the old version before they had to nerf it because it shot way more fragments, and this had like easily the highest damage potential in the game if I recall correctly. So that version is like probably up here all the way. Now with the new version, it's a lot more balanced, unfortunately, so I'll put it right here. I feel like that's a fair spot in the tier list because it's still not ranged and it is not as super versatile, and it locks in an animation. Yada yada. Same reasons as Terra Ring, but I feel like it's overall way stronger than Terra Ring, even though it's arguably harder to hit than an AoE around your character. Next is Hammer of Atlas. Hammer of Atlas is a melee projectile movement standard arcana. Fits anything under the sun, pretty much. Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Soccer Cleats, Gust Volley, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush, Bladed Buckler for projectile destruction, Reinforced Bracelet for projectile destruction, Mystic Monopole, one of my favorite items in the game because it forces you to be creative, and Electrifying Smock. Mystic Monopole makes so that nothing you do has knockback applied to it, or very, very minute knockback, as if everything had knockback resistance, which works in favor of this ability because it has a large amount of knockback, and against regular enemies that aren't knockback resistant, and even bosses that don't have a very high knockback resistance, you will just push them away eventually and deal much less damage with the base version of this ability, or even the enhanced version for that matter. So Mystic is fantastic for that. Also, especially now that you have a signature version on top, which is much more vicious, much faster, and pushes enemies away, therefore much harder overall. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and great coverage, granting you a decent amount of signature charge. It is easy to use and very versatile to do so. You can use it as a melee ability, as projectile destruction tool, as like an Olympic athlete if you want, or just fucking as a ranged ability for poking or procking rooms that are far away. I.e. triggering enemies that are stationary in that room waiting for you to be nearby, and this will actually like make them detect you and make them detect the projectile. I'm not sure how it works, and then it will start walking towards you, so you can easily group them up that way as well. It's a room activator, in other words. The signature version deals anywhere between 150 and 266 damage. 150 to me, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be much more than that. Like, that's pretty damn solid. If I have a very solid ability and it can do 150 damage on a signature, I'm happy. 266 with the Shark Mask, I'm still very, very happy. That's still pretty darn good. Like, I wouldn't necessarily build a Shark Mask on Hey Yo Family, but like, it's still pretty damn nifty, and I love it even just for the regular ability. It's super duper fun. I feel like it goes right here because it is not as consistently easily usable as Raging Inferno, which is just so busted. Maybe I am severely undervaluing Raging Inferno here as well against these, because it's just so busted. The base version is so insanely busted, you don't really need a signature on it. Well, I'll leave it right here. I think this is a good spot for Hammer of Atlas. It's in many ways the Earthen Blazing Lariat. It works just like it. You can dance around your foes. Or you can even throw the fucking hammer if you want. Shit, you can do whatever the hell you want, and it has projectile destruction too. So in many ways it's also an upgrade from Blazing Lariat, although arguably more difficult to use. Razor Petals is next. Razor Petals is a projectile standard arcana. It pairs up very well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Reinforced Braces, Gloves of Gamut, Ring of Reserves, and Roxel's Pendulum. We pretty much haven't seen any new items for quite some time at this point. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a rather decent coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge. It is, however, a little bit clunky to use. It can easily be destroyed before fully forming, so while you could use this even for projectile destruction, you want to make sure that it's unfolding first. So you have to throw it before projectile is even there, before projectile gets there, which makes it exceptionally hard to use against blocking archers projectiles, for example, right? Or even a lot of boss projectiles. So for projectile destruction, it works. You can definitely make it work extremely well, but it's insanely difficult to do that, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. If you want to have an ability with a high skill ceiling, go for it, it's great. The signature version deals anywhere between 138 and 207 damage. So, fairly alright ability, have a lot of charges, so a lot of flexibility. Fire this off, forget about it, make it deal some damage, generate some signature charge. It's quite great at that, really, especially when you have large groups of enemies. This is also another candidate that could work very well with the Mystic Monopole, I feel, although I would need to do more research on that. I don't think that's like a top tier item, but probably pretty fun, although I'm questioning they might just walk right past the flower then. Not sure, so maybe don't do that, but could be an interesting idea, I feel. Rock Solid Tomahawk is a projectile standard arcana, works very well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Fountain Pen, Mask, Family Seal, Reinforced Braces, Gloves of Gamut, Chaos Visor, and Singing Bowl. The regular version deals great damage at a decent coverage, although the coverage can be whatever you want because it's reusable, and it also, you know, works in AoEs and other mysterious ways. It grants you a great amount of signature charge generation, it's easy to use, and super duper versatile, can be used repeatedly as both a ranged and melee damage tool. Although if you're using this as a melee damage tool, my man, you have to try the ranged version, you have to see some numbers. You clearly are not having a grasp of how this ability is supposed to be used. The signature version deals anywhere between 540 to 805 damage, provided you have a target with even remotely as much health points. And it is capable of 400 plus damage without items, even when not having good aim. Yeah, as a signature, this thing is busted as fuck. You just need to be able to wield it, you need to find an opening. I am willing to make the point that this is so incredibly overpowering. It is more powerful than jumps. Even though the base version of this may not be as great, this should absolutely compensate, because you can obliterate any and everything as long as you can acquire enough signature charge. Maybe this is a little bit biased, maybe a little bit unfair, but looking at those numbers, I feel like the numbers in this case are actually everything, especially comparatively. Are we just comparing potential, or are we comparing the ability overall? Because overall, I feel like it'd probably go right here. Yeah. I feel like we stick with overall. Even with the potential, the ease of use is just very poor in rims. It's very, very difficult. It's a very much advanced players only kind of ability. Although I do fondly remember using this as a complete newbie, only using other abilities. And I did struggle with it quite a lot. It's kind of short ranged at times. It can be very hard to retract this properly and go up enemies. But the damage, man, the damage is so insane. Once you actually get to that point, it's so worth it. It's like very, very tippy top of S tier. This is as strong as an ability can become without being straight up banned or illegal in your state. Moving on to Toxic Bolas. Toxic Bolas, one of my ex-favorite abilities in the game, is a projectile standard arcana. Pairs up well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Gloves of Gamut, and Pandemic Pouch, because this is another supportive ability. We haven't seen one of those in a while, I feel. The regular version deals decent damage at a decent coverage, grants you a great amount of signature charge generation. It is fairly easy to use and it poisons and roots enemies, as well as provides you a decent means of projectile destruction. My biggest gripe with this, and why I don't play with it anymore, why I don't love it anymore, is while it does pierce and such as the enhanced version, so as a signature it's fantastic for damage, it's so insanely bad, so unfathomably, ungodly, heretically bad, that I really started to hate this, that I really started hating my favorite ability, or one of my favorite abilities in the game, just because you shotgun this out, but every single ball you shoot can only hit the same individual enemy once. What's the point of a shotgun? Did they try to balance it that way? If so, why are so many other abilities such horseshit comparatively and so unfair, and why are there other shotguns that work as intended, like Gust Volley? Or the water agent, right, whatever the fuck its name may be. I hate that. I really hate that. It makes me resent the time I spent with this, and it makes me really, really angry. So I really want to put it at the bottom, just because I would love to have a tier that's just called Fix Me, right? Please fix me. These abilities suck donkey dick, and even though Toxic Bolas in and of itself really isn't that bad, the signature, it really needs to be fixed. It shouldn't be like that. If you are a modder, please make a mod that just makes every single bowler deal its damage, and not just the first, because it's so bad, it's so horrible. Otherwise it would be fairly middle of the pack. Nothing super impactful, probably right here. It is very fun with the Pandemic Purge, it is very fun with the Level Rope. Other than that, really not that great of an ability. I just personally really enjoy using it, man. Man, it's so depressing. Moving on to something a lot less depressing. Obsidian Cascade. Kind of hard to spot here among all the purple. Obsidian Cascade is a projectile standard arcana, has a very well-wondrous mechanism. Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seed, loads of Gamer Chaos Riser, and Electrifying Smart, because it stuns. That's always a plus to me personally, because it enforces more creativity. Or rather, it allows more creativity. The regular version deals a great amount of damage if you can get all of its damage off. Again, it's kind of too much damage for targets just to live. It unfortunately deals damage at very poor coverage. It's again pretty much single target only and not easily retargetable, very much unlike a lot of other abilities on the list like Sparring Typhoon or Dragon Arc, or even like something as simple as the Boomerang abilities. Other than that, it grants you a decent signature charge generation. It is fairly easy to use and will stun enemies. The signature version deals anywhere between 210 and 330 damage, so it's on the rather high end, although for rims it is astronomically bad. Not as bad as Gust Volley, that's for sure, but they are very comparable overall. It's still better than these, I feel. Yeah, Toxic Bolas is just better for rim clear. Horrible for boss clear though. Yeah, well, goes right here then, I feel. Alright, next in line is Rock and Roll. Rock and Roll is an undefined standard arcana. Pairs up well with the Regenerative Inkwell. I like to use this more as a supportive ability than an actual signature. I feel like it's kind of a joke. We'll see why in a second here. Family Seal also works. Nerite Shell, Phoenix Town, and Permafrost Cube work pretty well, I suppose, and are pretty much the only other relics that I could mention here, because there are 9 no synergies in the game for this item being a signature, or sorry, this ability being a signature, or this ability period existing and being used and making it better. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, grants you a decent amount of signature generation, and it is easy to use. All that may sound fine, but when actually using it you will realize it doesn't scale like at all. The signature only deals between 60 and 168 damage, which is fairly lackluster for obvious reasons, and just the huge lack of base stats of a good signature and good relics makes this become unfortunately quite a bad ability. It could be so much more. It's nothing more than like a room clear helper, I feel. So very similar to Toxic Bolas, but I would still prefer having Toxic Bolas, I feel. Probably goes right here actually. Oh man. Oh well, it is a very hard decision for me to make. I don't have a ton of experience with either of these, but I really don't like either of these much as well. I feel like... yeah, I feel like it's gotta go a bit lower, because well, it just doesn't scale like at all. Even when you slap charges and cooldown reduction on here, comparatively, like, it's not gonna do as much. Alright, next is Earthquake Axe. What a fun ability. What a fun ability. I used to use this even before the rework, even a shit ton. I kind of hated it because I was very new to the game, and it's not the easiest to use by any means. That would be a massive understatement, but still insanely fun and satisfying to play and toy around with. It is an undefined standard arcana, has a very old wondrous mechanism, ancient fountain pen, shark mask, family seal, ring of reserves, Roxel's pendulum, analytical monocle, and electrifying smog. So it has a lot of creative input here right away. Looking at the relics, the regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage. It is decent at granting you signature generation and fairly easy to use, although with a massive asterisk. If you're new to the game, don't use this. It's too hard. It's way too hard. It looks into animations. It requires like advanced knowledge and advanced aiming, I would say. It's really not super easy to use, but baseline, I feel like it is easy to use, like across the board, across the skill levels. Like an intermediate is going to be able to make this work decently well. The signature deals anywhere between 190 and 330 damage, so more on the higher end of the spectrum, and I do absolutely feel like that about this ability too, although it is undefined, so scaling wise it's pretty hard to do anything with it. I feel like it's still better than a Cyclone Boomerang because it's so much more flexible on both boss killing, both for single target clear, even boss rush, even like if you're blindly thrown into a run with this and nothing else to support it with. I really like it a lot. I think it's great in hindsight. But be intermediate, right? Please don't play with this if you're new. This is just way too difficult. Next on the list is Prickly Ballet. Prickly Ballet is an undefined standard arcana, pairs up well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Tesla Coil, and Permafrost Cube for more crowd control. Because turns out this thing actually hits like a million times a second. Even though the regular version only deals decent damage overall at a decent coverage, the crowd control this can ensue, this can enforce, is quite mesmerizing to watch, and I've only recently come to terms with that this ability is actually, it actually feels some kind of niche, not just being a very goofy ability, but actually just being fun, whether it be appealing to a new player or to an intermediate player, or even someone who's been playing for a long time, because it's a challenge to make this work. A creative challenge, a challenge of play style. It is very clunky to use, unfortunately, and that is its greatest downfall. Not even just the horrible damage, but how hard this fucking thing is to understand and to use. The signature deals anywhere between 100 and 304 plus damage. I couldn't really get to a consistent value with the Shark Mask. It was actually kind of difficult to determine because there's just so much going on. 304, not necessarily to a single target, but rather in an AoE. It's very similar to what was I talking about earlier? I think it was when I talked about Stormdraft having like 300 damage. Obviously, not to a single target. This was meant to be about if I had like a lineup of enemies, like target enemies for example, how much can I deal, how much will I deal on average if I have like if I covered the whole width of this. Maybe not the best scheme of evaluating an ability, but we're just talking about the potential here, right? And Prickly Ballet is clearly not a single target only damage ability, it's more of an AoE crowd control tool. So the potential there is actually quite great. You can actually do quite a lot with it, surprisingly much in fact. This is a joke of an ability, but I still embrace it, I still enjoy it, I really love it. I think it's very low C tier. You can actually make this work, and I love to say that. I would love to say that about these two abilities as well, but hey, these just suck donkey dick, unfortunately. Shock Nova is next. We are starting things off strong with lightning abilities. Shock Nova is an undefined standard arcana, pairs up very old Inkwell if you want to use this defensively. Family Seal, Analytical Monocle, and Hunter Stiletto. What is that? That's fun. If you want to go for the damage route, the regular version deals a great amount of damage if you charge it fully, grants you a great amount of coverage, decent amount of signature charge. It's easy to use in Shock's enemies, and the signature deals anywhere between 134 and 184 damage, which really isn't that impressive. This is just a slightly better enhanced version of a decent ability. It doesn't scale extremely well, even with something like a a Singing Bowl, for example, so I'm not sure it should go into A tier. I think B tier is just fine, and we'll probably go right here, because for Rim Clear this is really nice, but scaling-wise, there's not really a scaling here, you know? Like, you can slap more status airmans and stuff on here to make this a supportive damage ability, which is quite fine, but it's not really more than that. And fine is alright, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be great. Fine is absolutely alright. I would say this is even above average. Next in line is Volt Pinball. Volt Pinball is a projectile standard arcana, pairs up pretty well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Glass of Gambit, and Cobalt Firestone. This is extremely entertaining. You should try the Beyblade build. I have made a video on that. It's amazing, especially in Boss Rush. One of the best, most fun, most entertaining to watch builds out there for sure. Also very well known. So if you haven't heard of that, you really gotta look it up. It's definitely in my video catalog. Enjoy is all I'm gonna say. The regular version deals a poor amount of damage, especially single target damage. It's abysmally bad. Although at a decent coverage, it pretty much spans across the entirety of the room as long as there are enemies around. You can use them as conductors. It grants you a poor amount of signature charge generation, and it is easy to use. The signature deals anywhere between 40 and 180 damage. So pretty horrible as a signature ability, but extremely fun as a regular ability. Just to install these two, I'll put it above because I would still rather use it over the fucking Falcons. God, I hate this thing so much. Next is Thunder Drop. Thunder Drop is a melee movement standard arcana, also a jump. So Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Megalon Tooth, Vicious Bunny Ears, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Fiery Paintbrush, and Kasim's Airy Cloak, because it suffers from the same problem as Seismic Entry further up in the list. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, granting you a poor amount of signature charge. It is easy to use, it grants invulnerability while jumping, on demand, so sweet. Sweet lord! This is actually quite useful, and it shocks enemies. This is more of a supportive damage ability yet again, because it's kind of clunky, even when you have a lot of like cooldown reduction and say the like duration in between using abilities were lowered. I wouldn't spam the ever-living crap out of this, so it's more on the bottom tier of jumps overall. The signature deals between 128 and 220 damage, so even that is on the lower end of the spectrum. I still feel like it's A tier. I still feel like jumps in principle cannot be anywhere below A tier because they just scale so well. They're melee abilities, they grant you iframes, they're versatile. Probably goes right here. I still prefer this over Cyclone Boomerang. This is kind of insulting, but man, the Cyclone Boomerang, it just locks you in, man. I mean, Thunder Drop also locks me in, but at least it makes me invulnerable, and it's guaranteed damage, and it can hit like half of the screen, and not just one enemy when I get really up close to them, and near sacrifice myself to them. That's Thunder Drop. Moving on to Voltaic Needle. Voltaic Needle is a melee movement standard arcana, Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Sucker Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush are recommended relics. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge generation. It is easy to use, although it does force you to move forward, and it's not the easiest to hit, especially on a new player, but the signature version, it remedies that quite well because it's much easier to hit and destroy entire screens with, especially lengthwise. The signature deals anywhere between 180 and 317 damage, so this is great for damage, scales pretty damn well. Definitely A tier in my book. Probably, it is very advanced yet again, it's a very advanced ability. I feel like it's better than Earthquake, but it's too advanced to be any higher on the list. And it's really not as great as a lot of these other abilities. Blazing Lariat is something that is an ability that I look at quite a lot here because, like, comparatively, it's damage-wise not as great as any of these other abilities, but it's so easy and carefree to use and so useful for rim clear. You can really not go wrong with it, whereas Voltaic Needle, you can absolutely fuck that shit up. I mean, it moves you forward, you can move into pits, you can miss it, you can hit the wrong target at the wrong time, you cannot have clumped up the enemies well enough. It's very advanced, and naturally that cannot be higher up in the tier, and I feel like that's a little saddening, but swiftly move on. Let's not ramble. Shock Assault is next. Talking about advanced abilities, Shock Assault is also very newbie friendly, or rather, it is recommended a lot to new players to use this. I don't get why. I can't even use this well. How are you going to be using it well as a new player? It's a melee movement standard arcana. Pairs up pretty well with Megalon Tooth, Regenerative Inkwell for healing, Really, that's great in my opinion. It's fantastic. You should absolutely recommend that. Soccer cleats, jumper cables, down katana, and an Indra's copper pipe for extra base damage for status A elements in the form of shock. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage, spanning across the entire room again, because you use enemies as conductors. So as long as there are multiple enemies around, this actually deals a decent amount of damage. When there's just one, well, shit happens. It grants you a decent amount of signature charge generation. It's rather easy to use, although it forces you to move forward. And it grants you invulnerability while dashing. It's not a jump, but as long as you hit your target, you're invulnerable for like a few split seconds, and then you will be left stuck in place. Very much similar to Thunder Drop as well as Seismic Entry. So it is, again, automatically more on the advanced side of things and very much not noob friendly. You will get yourself stun locked on stage 3 and above. So, well, probably don't recommend this so much. The signature version of this on low end deals a very piss poor 70, and on the high end like 113 plus damage. This is very much not impressive for a signature. I think I prefer any of these actually, which is kind of saddening to see, but at least these have potential, right? These can be made maybe even low B tier, but like Shock Assault I feel will never get out of C tier. You can't make it climb. Nah man, not even with like Dark Katana and a bunch of base damage. It's still sucky, and it still leaves you wide open, and it's still too slow and too short range, especially that dash you have to hit. If you miss it, too bad. No damage. No damage dealt at all. No iframes. Nothing. You're just taking all the blemish, all the blame, and all the damage to your shame, your face. Fuck, I just really wanted to hit that rhyme. Moving on to Arc Sphere, if I'm not mistaken. Arc Sphere is a melee standard arcana, pairs up with Wondrous Mechanism, Shock Mask, Dark Katana, Fiery Paintbrush, Electrifying Smock, which is actually quite fun, and Reinforced Braces, although I'm not a big fan of that on this ability, but you can do it. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting you a decent amount of signature charge generation. It is fairly easy to use and stuns enemies, and that's all it really does. And the signature deals anywhere between 160 to 220 damage. Middle of the pack, very much. Again, not very impressive at all. Still more useful than a lot of other abilities down here, because you can use this both as a decent crowd control tool and as a decent single target damage tool. So I feel like it goes like right here, roughly. Ease of use really determines a lot of these placements, right? When you look at this, a lot of these lower ranked abilities are very difficult to use, or they have very niche cases where they are good, like rock and roll, like anything down here really, like these four especially. Obsidian Cascade and Arc Sphere are kind of more difficult or more wieldy to use. Sonic Breaker is like really strong, but extremely hard to use, but has like a large coverage, so you can kind of compensate for it. And these other abilities, like anything above pretty much, is much easier to use on a consistent basis, because you have greater widths, you have more like forgiving timings, or they don't lock you in as harshly, and you can more easily follow things up. Like this one especially, this is like an all-round very easy to use button, whereas Arc Sphere, it has to be targeted towards a certain direction. That means, or that implies that you have to like somewhat climb up enemies to make this work, which is automatically harder to use and therefore worse overall. Whether you're advanced or not, it forces you to act more, it forces you to play around that weakness. Next is Radiant Beat. Oh, amazing ability. Radiant Beat is a melee standard arcana. Pairs up exceptionally well for ones with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fate and Pain, Shock Mask, Family Seal, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush, Ring of Reserves and Roxel's Pendulum. You know them by now, you love them. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a poor coverage. It's single target only, and then in a small... Think of it as you hit a single target and they kind of explode consistently, or they like radiate this energy, and anything around them will take a small chunk of damage. So it is single tank with an asterisk, but the coverage is nonetheless pretty poor. It grants you a decent amount of signature charge generation. It's easy to use and stackable on the same enemy. This is a boss killer and a boss fucking slayer. The signature deals anywhere between 188 and 257 damage, which isn't too impressive for a boss slaying tool, but it's stackable. Keep that in mind, it's stackable, and this combines pretty well with cooldown reduction and with instant cooldown resets. especially with other skills like Water Bubble, for example, is one that I found personally extremely useful, which is also a stackable debuff type of DPS kind of spell. Extremely powerful on a single isolated target, so pretty much exclusively good for boss killing. I'm not sure I want to put this into 80, I don't think I do. I think I will lower it in the rank quite a bit, because while it is quite strong, I think it goes like right here. While it is quite strong for boss killing, it is very, very hard to use for room clear. Maybe even lower. Yeah, I think especially looking at like new players, this is extremely difficult to use for room clear. Although easy to use at face value for what you should be using it for, that is. Magnetic Breakers is next. Magnetic Breakers is a projectile standard arcana pairs well with Regenerative Inkwell for support, Family Seal Gloves of Gambit, and Reinforced Braces for support. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge generation. It's very clunky to use and grants you a decent amount of projectile destruction. This is a purely supportive ability. You cannot convince me any other way. The signature kind of confirms this as well. On the low end, you deal 64 damage. On the high end, like as in pushing a target for a very, very long duration and hitting pretty much everything perfectly. Probably hitting multiple targets. I don't really remember how I tested this. Probably multiple targets. It deals around 294 plus damage. It may sound like a lot, but keep in mind we're just talking about the potential of it hitting like an entire wave of enemies. And something like a Heroic Blaze will be way more impactful because it deals like 200 damage to a single target already. So Magnetic Breakers is pretty damn bad, and it can't really get out of bad ability hell, I feel, no matter how much you try. I feel like it probably goes right here. I do prefer it over Stormdraft because at least it hits in an AoE. At least you can hit multiple targets at once and shove them around and such. Right, Deferred Dynamo. Deferred Dynamo is a projectile standard arcana, great with Regenerative Inkwell, as well as Family Seal, Gloves of Gambit, Ring of Reserves, Roxas Pendulum, and Noxious Dapper Cap, surprisingly, because it has this like huge crowd control effect. So Noxious Dapper Cap is actually quite useful as it deals a great amount of damage, but over a very long period of time, and this ability just helps you greatly to sustain that crowd control effect on individual enemies or entire groups of them. So Noxious Dapper Cap for once is actually quite an interesting recommendation. This is not something I would generally recommend on pretty much anything else in the game. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a poor coverage, granting you a decent amount of signature charge generation. It is fairly easy to use, although to maximize crowd control potential, this is quite advanced for sure. The signature deals anywhere between 112 to 204 damage. This is not super solid. This is again pretty much single target only, so I feel like it goes right here. Maybe even lower down. Yeah, probably even lower down. Rock and Roll is much more convenient to use overall. Next is Dragon Circuit. Dragon Circuit is a projectile standard arcana pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Fountain Pen, Mask, Seal, Gloves of Gambit, Ring of Reserves, Roxas Pendulum, and Chaos Visor. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting a decent amount of signature charge, and it is easy to use, so it's fairly alright looking at its base stats. The signature is no different, although could be considered on the higher end of things, deals anywhere between 190 and 345 damage. Very hard to get that damage off consistently. You need a large group of enemies. So it kind of wants to be crowd control ability, but it's pretty random where your stuff goes. Although it is mostly guaranteed, and it leaves you a lot of freedom in how you use it. So it's A tier for sure. It may not scale extremely well, but right out of the gates it's extremely useful, and I can respect that quite a lot. Ball Lightning is next. Ball Lightning is a projectile standard arcana, best well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Gloves of Gambit, Chaos Visor, Fire Paintbrush, and Singing Bowl. That's extremely important. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a poor coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge. It's easy to use and shocks enemies, and the signature without Singing Bowl deals on the low end 222 to up to 282 damage. This is a very strong boss killer. Arguably one of the strongest, one of the most consistent, and one that I favor quite a lot. It's very similar to Raging Inferno, very similar to Rockstar Tomahawk. I would say it's worse, but I have seen this go off so hard. It just one-shot everything. I wouldn't necessarily use it as a signature because baseline it's pretty powerful, but like, I don't think as a signature it's all that great. It probably goes a lot lower down in the list. Very similar to this ability, but swords can at least be used for AoE, so I'll put it right here. These are pretty much single target only, but I would still consider them better than something as clunky as like Arc Sphere or Sonic Breaker. They're just so disproportionately harder to use. Alright, next would be Spark Array. We find Lightning ability. Spark Array is a projectile standard arcana, pairs well with Regenerative Inkwell, Gloves of Gambit, and Bladed Buckler. By the items you can tell I like using this as a supportive / defensive ability / utility for just a little bit of stun locking here and there. The regular version of this deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, granting you a point amount of sick charge. It's easy to use, grants you a great amount of projectile destruction, and will shock enemies. Overall, not the best ability, not the most consistent. You can use it as supportive ability. It's very much in the same category as all of these, but I still prefer like a prickly Ballet because I've seen what it can do, and I don't know, man. Spark Array is a really hard decision, maybe even lower than Shock Assault, because at least Shock Assault, in the hands of an experienced player, can deal a lot of damage. With Spark Array, not so much, not really, and I don't feel like it's particularly powerful by any means. Snowflake Chakrams in the Ice/Water category is next. Snowflake Chakrams is an undefined standard arcana, pairs well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Shark Mask, Cobalt Firestone, and Permafrost Cube, which is especially interesting because you want to keep targets locked in place. The regular version of this deals a decent amount of damage on average, I would say. Great amount of damage against single targets as long as they're not moving at all, which is extremely difficult to recreate inside of an actual run, so Permafrost will help a little bit with that. Not a lot, because you won't repeatedly freeze the same enemy, likely. But Permafrost applies to the entire duration, right? So on the one hand, it's extremely difficult to get Permafrost to proc its effect reliably so, but on the other hand, when it does proc on one cast of this ability, on one target, you won't unfreeze it with like the next hit of the same ability. It'll be permanently frozen, and that's exceptionally useful. So very great recommendation here. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting you a poor amount of signature charge generation. It is very clunky to use and forces you to move quite a lot. It forces you to do quite a like death stance, dance standoff if you will, with your main target, and you're only ever gonna have one main target. You can't possibly use this very efficiently to hit multiple targets all at once. It's just way too difficult to do. The signature version of this deals anywhere between 130 to 220 damage, although take all that with a grain of salt, provided how difficult it is to make this actually deal damage. So realistic, it's probably a lot lower in terms of the damage category. I feel like this is at most a supportive ability or like a gag of an ability, I feel. I don't know, man. So it's probably in a tier with all these other kind of fun but not very useful series abilities. I still feel like you can actually make it work, very much unlike Shock Assault, which just it's so unflexible. These chakrams, they may not be doing a lot at the end of the day, but you just pop them and then you walk into the room and you're free to do whatever you want. They don't lock you into anything, they don't BS you. You just have to stand still very briefly, and you should be able to do then anywhere, anytime, pretty much, even in the middle of like a Cerebral Sphere, for example, and then just get closer to your target and try and deal some damage. Some is better than, you know, a lot, and then following that up by killing yourself or missing the tiny ass dash of Shock Assault and just literally dealing no damage at all and like just dying right after. Alright, enough ranting on the Shock Assault. Moving on to Heroic Maelstrom. Heroic Maelstrom is a melee movement standard arcana. That's a jump, so Wanderer's Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Vicious Bunny, Ahsoka Cleats, Jumper Cubes, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush, Cobalt Firestone, and Kasim's Airy Cloak. Pretty much anything you can imagine that you would want to have on a jump ability, you can slap on this and they're going to work wonders. In some cases, the regular version of this ability is a great amount of damage at a great coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge. It is easy to use and grants invulnerability while jumping. The signature version is actually quite special because you can move while using it, and that it just looks goofy as hell. It looks like you're a fucking whale or something moving around. It deals anywhere between 160 to 230 damage, so fairly mid-end or even low-end at this point. I'm not really keeping track of the average damage rating, but it is fairly good. It's definitely better than Thunderdome in my opinion, even if just for that maneuverability. I feel like it is very solid. It's still iframes on demand, very easy to use. Probably goes right here. I do like it quite a lot. Heroic Maelstrom is fan-flabbering-tastic. Crystalline Balestra is next on the list. Crystalline Balestra is a melee movement stand arcana, pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain, Pen Shark, Mask, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cleavers, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush. The regular version uses a great amount of damage, a decent coverage, can get a great amount of signature charge. It's easy to use, and that coverage, baby, that coverage, it feels good. And the animation, man, it's so heavy. It's really fun. The signature version deals anywhere between 205 to 307 damage. Yeah, very odd numbers here, but this is a fantastic ability, very comparable to all of these. They're all in the same ballpark. I think it may even go right here because of that scaling. The scaling, baby, the scaling is so much better, and the width and the range is actually for once quite comparable to a fireball. It's very versatile for a melee ability, and man, the coverage is so good. You can just, man, you can do so many things with it. I really love it. It's fantastic. Might even be considered S tier, but like if I'm gonna end up leaving Fireball in A tier, I will also end up leaving Balestra in A tier, just above, because of that scaling. And I feel like otherwise, like without the scaling aspect, they are extremely comparable, and introduce the scaling aspect, and suddenly this is like way better. It definitely has an edge on the Fireball in my book. Glacier Cross is next. Glacier Cross is a melee movement stand arcana, Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Cocker Cleats, Jumper, Cables, Dark Katana, Fire Paintbrush. I cannot read these names anymore, they annoy me. Our recommended items. The regular version of this deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, getting a decent amount of signature charge generation. It's easy to use and will freeze enemies, and the signature deals anywhere between 170 to 255 damage. It's solid. It's like Voltaic Needle if it were easier to hit, so I'll put it right there appropriately. Accordingly, hell yeah. We rank things accordingly. Wait, what? Can't do that. Tidal Blast is next. Tidal Blast is a melee standard arcana, which pairs up very well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Dark Katana, Fiery Paintbrush, and Bladed Buckler. This is one of my favorite defensive tools in the game, and I've only very recently come to that realization that I much prefer using this defensively over the offense, in that it's very much like Jump, but without that utility of having the option to grant yourself iframes, or effectively having the option to grant yourself iframes. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, granting a great amount of signature charge. It's easy to use, grants shield while using it. Yeah, that's a very water thing and very cool to see on a signature, and it grants you a fantastic amount of projectile destruction. Also, the signature deals anywhere between 192 to 269 nice damage, which is amazing. That's so good for a defensive tool. That's way better than Inferno Cannon, way better than Hammer of Atlas, which can also be considered a defensive tool, way better than any of these goons over here. And I would argue it's even... no, it's not. It's not better than Exploding Fireball because of that range. I mean, you have great coverage in terms of like how easy is it to hit this consistently, how easy is it to stomach enemies, crowd control crowds, to hit bosses and such, but like in terms of the raw ease of use, the raw coverage, Exploding Fireball just wins any day. It's way more usable. It doesn't force you to overextend and get closer to rims. With that criterion in mind, no, you're staying right there, Balestra. Balestra is just so much stronger, honestly, so much stronger. But Tidal Blast, not so much. I don't really like building it for raw damage, but like defensively, it's so good. It's a huge damage number tool that you have the option of slapping defense onto, and I value that a lot. To me, it's not a pure defensive tool, unlike something like this, for example, right? But very solid. So I'll leave it right there. as is Frost Scimitar is next. Ooh. Frost Scimitar is a projectile standard arcana, pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Glass of Gambit, Chaos Visor, Reinforced Braces, Ring of Reserves, and Roxel's Pendulum. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and a decent coverage, granting you a poor amount of sick charge. It's easy to use, granting you a great amount of projectile destruction on the way back, because it's a boomerang, and they tend to do that. But here it's especially impressive because, unlike something like a Razor Petals, I believe this is called, it doesn't shatter right away, and it's much easier to make happen, right? To make the projectile destruction tool happen. And you have like a lot of very powerful charges, and even like especially the signature version of this is very dominant at doing projectile destruction as well. The signature version, talking about the signature, deals about 110 to 220 damage, so it's fairly unimpressive. It's like a Cyclone Boomerang, but with greater ease of use, greater crowd control overall, and I just much preferred also the signature version of this, even though it may deal much less damage. It's pretty damn fun to use. Next is Ice Spear, one of my all-time favorite abilities in the game. For sure, Ice Spear is a projectile standard arcana, which deals great damage when you have Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Glass of Gambit, Fire Paintbrush, or Chaos Visor, but also the regular version in and of itself deals a great amount of damage. Fantastic, in fact, at a decent coverage, granting a great amount of sick charge. It's easy to use, grants you poor projectile destruction, and will freeze enemies and impale them, and you can push them into pits with this. It's so fun. It is an exploding fireball, but like as a thin line skill shot that is also like it is like exploding fireball. The thing with exploding fireball is it's crack cocaine because of that explosion, that huge impact, right? It's like you just dropped a little fucking meteor inside of the crowd. But Ice Spear is like, it's huge impact in a different way. It's also very flashy because it allows you for that huge knockback, for that impaling enemies, like entire groups of enemies, then like essentially stunning them, freezing them again, seeing those big, large, fat, motherfucking beautiful numbers crop up when you do that successfully. It's crack cocaine, the same kind of way, but also somewhat different. You digging me? Cool. The signature deals anywhere between 180 to 270 damage, and to me, it trumps Exploding Fireball any day of the week. This thing is so fun. Also, it can be held for some stylish animations, especially when you have the signature. That's super goofy because you have, I believe, 5 of these spears, and you're holding all of them at once, and you can just keep holding the button, never release it. It looks so goofy. You can look around while doing that. Do it. Try it. It's fun. Aqua Breaker is next. Aqua Breaker is a projectile standard arcana, pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Gloves of Gambit, Fire Paintbrush, Chaos Visor, and who would have guessed it's charged Singing Bowl, of course. Regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, getting a great amount of sick charge. It's easy to use and grants you a decent amount of projectile destruction, although I've never really considered using it for that, but hey, you can. The signature deals between 172 to 258 damage, so it's pretty solid. I don't like it as much as a Raging Inferno because it doesn't have as much width, and I mean, it still feels very meaty, very heavy, but other than that, yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. It's fun, but not as great as Raging Inferno. Frostfang is next. Frostfang is a projectile standard arcana, pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Gloves of Gambit, Chaos Visor, and Roxel's Pendulum, actually, even though this is for once not a charge-based ability. The regular version deals a decent amount of damage at a great coverage, getting a decent amount of sick charge. It's easy to use, but can be tough to angle, and it launches you backwards when you use it. Not straight up into a pit, but that is something to be taken into account when you're trying to combo. It grants you a poor amount of projectile destruction and will freeze enemies in a large cone, so pretty much the entire room. Especially now that it's enhanced. Very much unlike its unenhanced version, which is way tougher to use overall, I feel. The signature deals anywhere between 125 to 370 damage if you shotgun it straight to the face of your foe, but you may need a Mystic Monopole to do that. It's pretty damn solid for both room clear and boss clear. I feel like... Is it as great as Scimitar? Is it really? I think so. I think we put it right here because it's so consistent and so damn easy to make work. Really, Scimitar and the likes. Like, you still have to fire off charges, you know? What are you, like a Neanderthal or something? That is, man, you really want to work for those kills? Hell no, just fire it off and unleash. that's it. Good enough. Rebounding Icicles next. Rebounding Icicles is an undefined standard arcana, pairs well up with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Seal, Ring of Reserves, Pendulum, Nerite Shell, and Tesla Coil, baby. It's a supportive ability. Who would have guessed? The regular version deals a decent amount of damage, a decent coverage, getting a decent amount of sick charge, and it's fairly easy to use. And it hits extremely frequently, and the signature is insanely satisfying, but unfortunately it feels very much out of place in this game. It's just so sluggish and kind of bad because of the base damage of the ability. It still manages to deal an impressive 125 to 228 plus damage. Not as impressive as a lot of these other abilities, but when you look at the base version of this ability, it's quite impressive. I feel like it's just the creme de la creme of support ability, so it probably goes like right down here. Like support only weird abilities. Well, yeah, I don't know how to word this. I don't know, man. I don't know how to make you look good, Rebounding Icicles. You're really not that great. Especially the old version. Oh my god, that was so horrible. I wanted to love it. I really did. I'm so glad they reworked how that signature works, because the old one was so unfathomably bad, and the new one is still extremely bad because of the horrible base damage, but at least now it looks flashy, feels good, and you can do like a super fun crit build with it if you want to. All you need is like 100 different relics to make that work, and a secondary ability just so you can actually play the game. Aqua Beam is next. Aqua Beam, one of the most popular noob abilities, and very comparable to Tectonic Drill. Extremely impactful, extremely powerful ability. It's an undefined standard arcana, pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Ring of Reserves, Rocks of Pendulum, Elegant Monocle, and Fiery Paintbrush. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, getting a decent amount of signature charge generation. It's easily retargetable, keep that in mind. Super duper fun. It's easy to use on top of that, and gives you a great amount of projectile destruction. Hell yeah, baby. And the signature, besides making you feel like a Pokemon, like a water Pokemon on highest level with whatever the fuck the move is called, I can't remember. It's not Aqua Beam. Well, Aqua Beam works too, right? It's a low level move, not quite as powerful, but it makes you feel like you have. Oh, goddamn! I'm just realizing Aqua Beam. It's like the ability. It's called like our Arcana. Hey, that's pretty fun. Anyway, stop rambling, bastard. This makes you feel like a Pokemon, and the signature deals about 150 to 225 damage, which is very solid. This is a very, very solid ability overall. This is just an Inferno cannon, but single retargetable version of it, and I feel like it's worse overall. Maybe not though. You can quickly chuck it in, you can abort it much more easily. I feel like it has much more width to it. Sorry, no, much more range to it than Inferno Beam, so yeah, I think I'll leave it right here. Moving on to the final element. Sorry, no, we still have Dragon Surge. Damn, the Outcast in here, look at that boy. I wouldn't have noticed if it weren't for the color, to be honest. Dragon Surge is an undefined standard arcana, works well with Regenerative Inkwell, Permafrost Cube, Roxel's Pendulum, Watercolor Palette, Mobius Coil, and Tozy's Pocket Watch? What is this listing? How is this not like the same 10 items that we've been reading through for the entirety of the list? Well, this is a support-only ability. You can tell me whatever you want. You can tell me this can potentially hit 1,000,000 times. It's still not gonna do much. So slap supportive items on there. I like Inkwell not as much as just making this better by slapping a shitload of cooldown reduction on it. That's why I mentioned the Palette, Quill, and Pocket Watch. I would sincerely prefer having cooldown reduction on the base version of this, in the case of the Pocket Watch, instead of ever actually being able to use the signature, because realistically you won't be able to use the signature unless you have an extremely strong build beside having this ability as a signature, you know. The Lariat version deals a decent amount of damage and a decent coverage, getting you a very, very poor amount of signature generation. It's easy to use and homes in on enemies. The signature deals anywhere between 65 to 223 plus damage, wildly varying, extremely uncontrollable. I would say this is completely randomized. Still alright ability, because at least it's going to help you with room clear, so I feel like it's going right over here, and it's staying there forever. Arcane Intervention is our first Chaos ability. Oh, and what a first ability. Arcane Intervention. Is it this? No, that's Astral Dissonance. Arcane Intervention is this one. Arcane Intervention is an undefined standard arcana. Pairs up well with Inkwell, Special Snowflake, Destructive Abacus, and Wings of Icarus. These three pretty much go hand in hand. As well as Noxious, Dapper Cap, or Phoenix Talon if you want to sincerely make this become a damage tool for anyone except Sora. This is a very strong support-only ability, I feel. It is not capable of dealing damage all that well, although the regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, getting a decent amount of sick charge, and is fairly easy to use. And actually can be thrown into pits, very much unlike other abilities, so this thing will just float on top of the pit, and this is kind of the main strategy with it, right? You throw this into a pit, and you teleport a bunch of enemies into that pit and they die immediately. That's my favorite way of using it. When you don't have pits, you have to make it work. You have to work quite a lot to make it work. Because turns out it's very hard to hit, especially when you're very close to your target, like in a boss fight. You want to get close usually with most of us, unless you have like a fully ranged build, in which case this is really not a great signature to pick. Either way, this ability is very problematic, although quite fun. The signature can deal anywhere between 140 to 290 damage, although I wrote in between 140 and 144 damage. It depends what we are looking at. Depends whether we are looking at like a single target and what distance we are looking at them from, because you can't really hit them with everything. You have two AoEs essentially to manage, right? Don't check me on the numbers. I absolutely do not remember how how those came to be. This ability is creme de la creme of support abilities, I feel. Definitely not a B tier though. I feel like it's way too hard to make work at all. Like even with all those support relics, it's a bad ability overall, and I would support having these two like any day. I would prefer that for sure. Moving on to Astral Dissonance. Astral Dissonance is a melee movement projectile standard arcana, and one that is heavily abused because it's also a jump, so it's practically every category under the sun. That means Wanderer's Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Tooth, Vicious Bunny Ears, Soccer Cleats, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Chaos Visor, Fiery Paintbrush, and Cobalt Firestone work wonders on this ability, as well as any amount of cooldown reduction, which is just completely busted. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, getting a decent amount of signature charge. It is very easy to use and grants invulnerability while jumping. You can either stand still using this or move. You have the choice, and it combines well with virtually every single relic under the sun, every single stat in the game that you can acquire, but most of them all, best of them all, cooldown reduction. You can get 100% cooldown reduction on this and just spam it the entire time. The signature deals anywhere between 150 and 129 damage, which isn't actually super impressive, but the fact that this is just the most versatile ability in the game is S tier. It's the best of all jumps by far. It is extremely noob friendly, or extremely abusable on the other side of things. It's just so good. It's so extremely overpowered. It should absolutely be nerfed. It shouldn't be melee, projectile movement, and jump. That's just too many things all in one. Alright, next on my list is Gravity Onslaught. Gravity Onslaught is a melee movement standard arcana, pairs well up with Wanderer's Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Soccer Cleaver, Jumper Cables, Dark Katana, Barrage, Ring of Reserves, and Roxel's Pendulum. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and a decent coverage, getting a decent amount of signature charge, and it is very easy to use. The signature version this deals anywhere between 200 and 406 plus damage, so very powerful. Doesn't need to be controlled very well, even for that high end damage on the signature. It's just another one of these dashes, but it's super powerful. It needs a little bit of cooldown reduction to come online, but so does like Dragon Arc, for example. I'd still argue it's better than Blazing Lariat. Maybe not. Blazing Lariat hits the entire room and it's just so extremely easy. So Blazing Lariat is kind of the end boss here of high A tier abilities. I see. Moving on to Mortal Coil. Mortal Coil is a projectile standard arcana, pairs well up with Wanderer's Mechanism, Shark Mask, Glass of Gamut, Chaos Visor, Fire Paintbrush, and a Sparrow Windstone. This is super duper interesting because you reel enemies in and then you want the Windstone to actually push them away, and it doesn't actually detract from the pulling in kind of process either. You don't actually ruin any part of your combos with this, which is quite fun. I find that very interesting. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, going to get a decent amount of sick charge, and it is easy to use, and the signature deals between 190 and 299 damage. Pretty solid. Single tired ability, I feel like it just goes right here. I don't feel like I have to look into it too much. Because it does scale pretty alright, so I do like it better than like any of these down here, which pretty much don't scale at all. They don't have like the most amazing base stats. This one has pretty damn solid base stats. It's just a line-based skill shot, that's the only caveat to it. Chaotic Buster, right, this one, right? Chaotic Buster is a projectile standard arcana, and a charged one at that, so of course we run Wanderer's Mechanism, Fountain Pen, Mask, Seal, Gambit, Visor, Paintbrush, and Singing Bowl. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, getting a great amount of sick charge. It's very self-sufficient, that is very notable here. It's easy to use, and the signature deals anywhere between 270 to 400 plus damage. This is one of the best projectiles in the game, one of the best signatures in the game, period. The damage is ridiculous when you charge it up and just let it rip. It's not great at clearing rooms, it's pretty alright, I feel, but yeah, well, you just pick a target and destroy it, and every run around it will also take a bunch of damage. I'm indifferent. I think I'll leave it right here underneath the gems. I feel like it's better than Tectonic Drill, actually. It's definitely better than Rock Slide because it's so much easier to use. But Tectonic, yeah, well, Tectonic Drill is technically better, I feel, in more situations, but way harder to use, so I'll leave it right where it is. Next is Distortion Beam. Distortion Beam is an undefined standard arcana as well with Wanderer's Mechanism, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Ring of Reserves, Roxas Pendulum, Bladed Buckler, and Fire Paintbrush. So you have a ton of options for how you actually want to build this thing, whether offensively or defensively, or just as a utility tool. You can also apply a bunch of status ailments if that is what you wish for. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and a great coverage, granting you a great amount of signature charge. It is easy to use and grants you a great amount of projectile destruction. So very nice ability overall. This is just the Chaotic Man's Aqua Beam, pretty much. The signature deals anywhere between 170 to 284 plus damage. Thereby, this is actually way better than Aqua Beam. You just pop it down, you're not even forced to stand still, and you have multiple charges of it too, so it scales extremely well. And since the signature is so damn solid, I feel like it goes right here. Yeah. These three have absolutely mind-bogglingly crazy signatures. So this is the absolute dead border for Distortion Beam, I think. Mark of Discord is a projectile standard arcana, as well as the Wanderer's Mechanism, Shark Mask, Gust Volley, Chaos Visor, Fiery Paintbrush, and Permafrost Cube, because it hits a billion times. It kind of suffers from the same problems as all these supporter boys down here, so status ailments can help it deal more damage. Talk about damage, the regular version deals a great amount of damage when you can actually get all that damage off, but again, that's just unrealistic. It's not gonna happen, not even like in best case. It's just unrealistic unless you've been looping for a while, something like that. At a decent coverage, and it grants you a decent amount of sick charge. It is very clunky to use and absolutely brutally difficult for rim clear. The signature deals anywhere between 220 to 322 damage. Sorry, 323 damage. That 1 point really matters. So it's kind of like using a Gust Volley for rim clear. It's very much like that, because this is the shotgun ability in the game beside Gust Volley. I feel like it can probably go like right up here, but I like, honest to God, I do prefer rock and roll over it. It's really not that good. Yeah, no, I'm so sorry. This feels so morally degenerate and wrong to do, but I have to. I just have to. Piercing Void is next. Piercing Void is an undefined standard arcana as well with Regenerative Inkwell, Family Seal, Fire Paintbrush, Permafrost Cube, and Narrate Shell to keep enemies permanently stunlocked inside of the area of this, which is actually not like a necessary tool, but extremely useful. These are extremely useful relics to make an already pretty solid ability even better. in this particular case. The regular version deals a great amount of damage at a great coverage, getting a great amount of sick charge. It is fairly easy to use, and the signature deals between 130 and 224 damage. This is very nice. I do like it quite a lot. This has gotta go right here, I think. Because it doesn't scale super well, so I don't feel like it's quite S tier. I don't feel like it scales at all, pretty much. It's just a supportive tool, man. It's a very good supportive tool. And if you loop a lot, I'm sure you have a different opinion on it. I'm sure it gets either drastically worse or drastically better. I'm not sure. I would guess that it remains about the same or moves towards the lower end of B tier, but I think it's pretty damn solid. Null Parade. Null Parade is an undefined standard arcana, pairs well up with Wondrous Mechanism, Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Fire Paintbrush, Singing Bowl, and Analytical Monocle. The regular version deals a great amount of damage and a great coverage, getting a great amount of sick charge, and it is easy to use. Super duper abusable ability. Signature deals between 200 and 258 damage, so there's not a large variety in that, i.e. it's very consistent at dealing roughly 200 damage. It goes right here, I feel. It's like, I prefer Exploding Fireball, although Null Parade is great for room clear. So is Exploding Fireball when I use it properly. That's just an advanced nitpick, I feel. Null Parade is completely brain dead to a new player, like, so damn easy to use. Okay, finally we have Phantom Brigade. Phantom Brigade is an undefined standard arcana. Pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Family Seal, Rock Suspension, Watercolor Palette, Mobius Cone, Analytical Monocle, i.e. a ton of cooldown reduction. In summary, the regular version deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, getting a great amount of sick charge. It's easy to use and homes in on enemies, and the signature is quite special in that it applies any status effect under the sun according to the hitting night, or the color of the night rather, or the element of the night, however you want to put it, and it deals anywhere between 290 to 390 damage on single targets, which is very nice. I love that. Especially impressive, super duper strong ability, extremely safe, goes right towards the middle of S tier. I mean, what other spot could it possibly be in? Moving on to Nullflesh Agent. Nullflesh Agent is a Salmon standard arcana, pairs well with Wondrous Mechanism, Shark Mask, Megalodon Tooth, Grimoire of Ruin, Archaic Cheat Sheet, Pop-Up Prime, and Yuna Storybook. Those are the usual summon recommendations. The regular version for this deals a great amount of damage, a decent coverage, granting no amount of signature charge generation, as is unfortunately the grim reality for all summon abilities in the game, which is probably why there's only one summon signature in the game, being this. It is, however, extremely easy to use and easy to control as well. The signature version of this has an extremely long duration. It is laughably ridiculous, so keep it alive for the entirety and just pop it when it's valuable. Don't waste it. It deals anywhere between 210, that's insane for a summon, to 500 plus damage, depending on how many targets you can hit, depending on how lucky you get. This is the Disco Ball of Doom, and I'm all for it. It's a very strong ability. It can go into S tier because it's quite frankly not. The base version is very, very solid though. I feel like it probably goes right here, maybe a little lower because of room clear tools. I do prefer swinging the hammer over popping the cork on Nullflesh. I feel like Nullflesh takes a while to clear rooms, but it is extremely powerful, especially if you can somehow acquire enough means of charging your signature, which is very hard because this ability doesn't gain you any of it. So you have to work extremely hard, but when you do, this will absolutely pay off. This will be very high A tier, if not even S tier damage wise, especially into boss rooms. And finally, so fittingly called, yada yada yada, Absolute Finale, which is a projectile standard arcana. Pairs up very well with Wondrous Mechanism, Ancient Fountain Pen, Shark Mask, Family Seal, Gloves of Gambit, Chaos Visor, Fiery Paintbrush, and I'm so happy to say this for the final time today, Singing Bowl. The regular version of this deals a great amount of damage at a decent coverage, granting you no signature charge generation at all. But it is easy to use and sets hit enemies to the Shadow Realm, like in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which pretty much instantly kills most enemies in the game and heavily damages bosses and everything else. The signature only deals a whopping 100 to 150 damage. But taking into account how mind-bogglingly overpowered this ability is, it's gotta go minimum A tier. Taking into account how bad the signature is and how bad it is comparatively to a lot of other abilities on here, well, where do we put it? Probably like right here. I do prefer homing flares. They kind of do the same thing, they also hit 1 billion times a second. Yeah, I think that's it. That is the list, my friends. Alright, a recap. Let me have a moment here because I love signatures. I'm a whore for signatures. I'm all about signatures. That shit is my playstyle. I love it. But if I had to pick some favorite signature abilities in the game, I don't want to be too picky here. And I don't want to name them in order because that's quite frankly too difficult. Okay, let's name the ones that I absolutely adore. Astral Dissonance, Tearing Whirlwind, Exploding Fireball, Ice Spear, and lastly, Tectonic Drill. Those would be my 5 favorites, I feel. Alright, that having been said, that is the tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a lot of work getting to this point. I have been working for, like, I don't know, man, like close to a year on preparing all this stuff, and I've been working my ass off to try and learn editing and all that shit. So I hope you can appreciate it. I hope I could do something for you. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this like format, what you think of my opinion, if you have different opinions, what your favorites are, especially. That is the thing that interests me most, generally speaking. And you know how it is, you know how it goes. Until next time, I wish you all a good morning, a good day, or a good night, in hopes of remedying that one time I fucked this up, and goodbye.